Welcome to Fanfiction Audiobooks. I evolve infinitely in the Marvel world. Chapter 21 You are harassing me. Tony, what did you and Mr. Coulson talk about? After Pippo saw Coulson leaving on the first floor, he saw Tony walking directly to the basement and asked curiously. Nothing, just a chat about Blue Star's current situation and future. When Tony Stark heard this, he said something casually and went straight down in the elevator. Regarding the matter discussed with Coulson, even a genius like him could only accept it so quickly after seeing the god of death with his own eyes and having some mental preparation. If Pippo, an ordinary person, understood and believed it, he would have to waste a lot of words. Maybe after convincing Pippo, he would say things like not wanting him to go to the battlefield. Although Tony Stark's words were perfunctory, they were undoubtedly true. In summary, the content of the conversation between the two revolved around the future of Blue Star. It's just that when Pippo saw Tony Stark's perfunctory attitude, he obviously couldn't be satisfied, so he took the initiative to follow him and wanted to ask Tony Stark. Tony Stark already had a way of dealing with Pippo, so the two began to quarrel with each other. The other side. Last night, Harvey Amberica got an unsolicited contact from Tony Stark. He already knew Tony Stark, had already eliminated Obadiah Stane, an Iron Overlord obviously couldn't get out. Because without Obadiah Stane to snatch it, it would be impossible for others to build the arc reactor in a short period of time. So the next period of time will be a calm time. Of course, calmness is only relative to Harvey. For others, New York has always been uneven. Tony Stark won't be able to settle down anytime soon. Given Tony Stark's character, as long as he knew that he could make an appointment to meet through the dark web, he would definitely contact him later. Now he just had to wait. As for why Harvey didn't answer Tony Stark's call last night, there's no big reason and it wasn't busy. It's simply that Harvey doesn't want to see Tony Stark showing off to him. After all, although Tony Stark's temperament has changed a lot, he has become kind-hearted and willing to help the weak. But Tony Stark's inner arrogance and inconsiderate words and actions have not changed much. Harvey was wearing short-sleeved shorts and playing games in front of the luxurious big screen in the lobby. He knows that he will soon be entering his 22nd year in the Marvel world. Harvey has no friends in this world that he can talk to. Because Asians were orphans in the past, and were born into poverty, they suffered a lot of bullying and neglect. He doesn't have much thought about friends. Just don't bother him or block his sight. After this idea awakened to the powerful power of the system, and Harvey's superficial identity was already a Diamond King in the eyes of countless people, Harvey no longer wanted to make any friends. If making friends with others requires deliberately catering to others in order to make friends, then it is better for him not to make friends. In addition to the 5 days of exercise that are required for a week, there are 2 rare days of rest. What is Harvey's hobby of relaxing? Then just go find more delicious food or play games at home. There are various games. Harvey initially liked to play competitive games, such as racing, MOBA, FPS, etc. However, with Harvey's physical fitness and senses, he was always regarded as a cheating player every time he played competitive games, and was often reported and his account was banned. Harvey was too lazy to call and argue with the officials, so gradually Harvey stopped playing competitive games and turned to casual games. For example, those who raise pets or farm, this kind of game will be fine even if it is not online for a long time. It just fits his resting style of playing for about a few hours a week. If you want to make some money, you can exchange experiences with people online from time to time, which is also a good time to relax. It took Harvey more than an hour to finish all the daily tasks in several games. After that, Harvey went out looking for something to eat. With 5 meals a day, he would have more than 100,000 evolution points in one day. If he specifically looks for food made by some more powerful animals to eat, he can get more evolution points. As for wine, it doesn't bring him many evolutionary points. It's just a drink. However, Harvey usually doesn't go looking for them specifically. After all, if he wants evolution points, he has many ways to obtain a large number of evolution points, so he always gets it when he's in a good mood. If he is willing to be more cruel to himself, it is not impossible to evolve 100 times a week. Harvey drove the Maserati out this time. While driving, he was thinking about when Tony Stark would be hosting some big dinner party or exhibition, so that he could go there and have some food. In this way, the days passed day by day. A month passed in the blink of an eye. Tony Stark drove a steel suit and went to Afghanistan several times to find the Ten Rings gang. After spending some time, Tony Stark finally wiped out the Ten Rings gang and freed Gamora from the situation of purgatory on Earth. Rumors about Iron Man are spreading in various alliance countries and the United States. The people of Gamora regard Iron Man as a hero, but many people in the United States have begun to doubt whether it is technology produced by Stark Industries. Because currently only Stark Industries in the United States has the possibility to produce such advanced technology. Faced with many doubts from the outside world, Tony Stark finally held a press conference and said directly in front of countless people around the world, "I am Iron Man." The identity of Iron Man was confirmed, making countless people in the United States crazy. This was followed by a summons from the National Council. "I want Tony Stark to hand over the core of this technology and contribute to the country." Ordinary people might be intimidated by the Council of Nations, but who is Tony Stark? Before he changed his appearance, he was a world-famous super genius and weapons dealer, and he was also an honorable taxpayer. It was not that easy to suppress him with power. So Tony Stark refused in public and left the scene directly. This move made countless people in the United States worship Iron Man even more, and his reputation was even greater than when he was still a playboy. And it was on this day 1 month later. After Tony Stark rejected the Council of Nations questions, he returned to the manor to finish dinner, then came down from upstairs and entered his laboratory to give casual instructions. "Jarvis, contact Harvey M. Locke." "Okay, sir." Jarvis had long been accustomed to this. Ever since the time Tony Stark was refused a hearing. Every day Mr. Tony Stark would ask him to contact Mr. Harvey M. Locke. "I thought that this time it would be the same as usual, and I would be rejected instantly, but this time it was connected." "Tony Stark, you called me every day for a month. Do you know that this is harassment? My phone and tablet have many other uses than turning them off every day just to not receive your call." And the first sentence that greeted the call was Harvey's somewhat contemptuous words. "Jarvis, does this constitute harassment?" When Tony Stark heard this, he stopped when he was about to work, and asked after hesitating. "In a sense, yes, sir." Jarvis paused after hearing this, thinking about whether to answer truthfully, but in the end he chose to answer tactfully. Chapter 22 Friends Who Understand. "You keep refusing to listen. What can I do?" Tony Stark also felt a little unreasonable when he heard this, but he still said it bluntly. "Forget it, what do you want from me?" Seeing that Tony was still being stubborn, Harvey didn't bother to dwell on the issue and asked directly. "It's rare to get through your phone call and come to my house for a chat. I have something I want you to see." Tony Stark immediately became energetic after hearing this and extended the invitation. Of course he wanted to show Harvey M. Locke his technological achievements. The one he uses most often is Mark number 2, but within this month, his Mark has become more than number 2, and has been improved to Mark number 5. But only he knows these things. Tony Stark thought of Harvey Umbrica and saw other armors in his laboratory admiring him. It brought a smile to Tony Stark's face. "Is there anything to eat?" Harvey saw that Tony Stark actually issued an invitation, and asked after thinking about it. "Food. Harvey M. Locke, I rarely invite people to my home. I invited you over, and you actually asked me if I had anything to eat." Tony Stark, who was originally immersed in fantasy, was stunned for a moment when he heard this question and said angrily. But soon Tony Stark remembered a rumor circulating among New York's upper class. Harvey M. Locke's stomach is a bottomless pit, and this rumor only appeared at Stark's charity ball a month ago. He also saw Harvey M. Locke eating very well. "Wait, I can have someone do it." So Tony Stark also reacted and said, "Please ask someone to prepare a dinner for 100 people first. I will be there soon." Harvey immediately agreed upon hearing this. As soon as he finished speaking, Harvey hung up the phone, changed his clothes and drove out. "What did Jarvis just say?" Tony Stark thought he heard wrongly and asked Jarvis. "Sir, you heard that right. Mr. Harvey M. Locke said he wanted dinner for 100 people. Jarvis answered immediately after hearing this. "Jarvis will help me contact the chefs at the 5-star hotel and ask them to prepare it and deliver it as quickly as possible. Excluding the price of the vegetables, I will give each of them $5,000 as expedited expenses." Tony Stark heard this and spoke. He didn't want to see Harvey M. Locke come to his house and look like he was dissatisfied with his poor hospitality. "Okay, sir." Jarvis contacted him immediately after hearing this. In fact, Tony Stark didn't just want to show off to Harvey Umbrica. He still had some things he wanted to talk to Harvey M. Locke about, such as his thoughts on the Avengers. Maybe even talk about aliens if you can. Maybe Harvey M. Locke already knows about aliens in the universe? Tony Stark couldn't be sure of this, but Tony Stark also left the laboratory directly and sat on the first floor. What happened? Pepper saw that not long after he had just gone to the laboratory, he immediately came up and sat on the sofa on the first floor. He looked a little uneasy and asked worriedly. It's okay, just sit here for a while. Tony Stark paused after hearing this and said. Jarvis. Pepper heard this answer and asked Jarvis directly. Sir is preparing to entertain a friend. Faced with Pepper's inquiry, Jarvis's voice rang out. What a friend, just a guest. Tony Stark heard this and retorted directly. What friend? I do not know how. Seeing that he ignored Tony's reaction, Pepper's curiosity was aroused and she continued to ask Jarvis. It's Mr. Harvey M. Locke, he's on his way here now. Jarvis also answered honestly. When did they become friends? When Pepper heard the name, she glanced at Tony in surprise and said. Harvey M. Locke was not familiar to her but not unfamiliar either, but she had not heard that Tony had such a close friendship with Harvey M. Locke. In this month. Jarvis heard the words and replied again. Pepper heard Jarvis' vague answer and didn't understand it for a moment. No need to ask, in short, Harvey M. Locke is going to be here as a guest. There will be a lot of food delivered later. Please help receive it later. Tony Stark interrupted Pepper's further curiosity and gave direct instructions. It's okay not to say this. This statement made Pepper even more confused. Didn't they just have dinner not long ago? The food is for Mr. Harvey M. Locke. He seems to have a good appetite, so prepare more food. Jarvis saw the confused look on Pepper's face and gave the answer. The rumors are actually true. Pepper asked a little surprised when he heard this. Although I can't understand why humans can eat so much food, the rumors are indeed true. The big eater isn't as good at eating as him, right? Yes, none of the big eaters in the world have as good an appetite as Mr. Harvey M. Locke. Pepper and Jarvis asked and answered questions, and the two started chatting directly. More than 20 minutes passed quickly. Sir, Mr. Harvey M. Locke has arrived at the gate of the manor. The door has been opened for it. Jarvis's voice reported. Soon, the door to the villa opened automatically. Harvey was not surprised by all this. Pepper was dazzled when she saw Harvey M. Locke, who was wearing a white suit, upright posture, and extremely handsome appearance. She often sees all kinds of handsome white guys, but she sees relatively few handsome Asian guys. Although this was not the first time I saw them, I usually saw them from the side and knew there was no overlap, so I didn't pay too much attention to them. But this time the other party came to visit, which made Pepper bewildered for a moment. Who doesn't like young and handsome young grass? Ahem. At this time, a cough came from the side, which brought Pepper back to her senses. Hello, Mr. Harvey M. Locke. Pepper lowered her head, then raised her head with a polite smile. Hello, Miss Pepper Potts. Harvey responded politely after hearing this. Let's go downstairs and chat. When Tony Stark saw Harvey M. Locke coming, he stood up and pointed behind him with his thumb. Harvey glanced at Pepper after hearing this, thoughtfully, and then nodded. Pepper, you don't need to pour us coffee without my instructions. We'll be here as soon as we finish talking. Tony Stark specifically warned him when he took Harvey M. Locke down there. Pepper was curious when she saw Tony's mysterious look, but she could only agree. Don't let her know. It seems that the latest technology you developed is not the only thing you came to talk to me about. Harvey said as he followed Tony Stark to the stairs. It seems that I still can't hide it from you, but since you have guessed what I probably want to talk about, you also know that those things are not something she can understand. Tony Stark found that his thoughts were seen through just his words, and he showed a trace of helplessness. It's not that you think she can't understand, but that she understands but can't understand you. When Harvey heard this, he glanced at Pepper, who was looking at him curiously, and at Tony Stark, who seemed to have something on his mind. Not only her, but many people may not be able to understand it, so I brought you here. Tony Stark heard these somewhat meaningful words, sighed slightly, and said. Then let me listen. Harvey paused after hearing this, with a smile on his face, and said. Jarvis, they two really seem like friends. Although Pepper couldn't follow and couldn't hear clearly, she saw Tony and Harvey M. Locke starting to chat before they even went down to the underground research room. Sir is not good at expressing his feelings, but my judgment will not be wrong. Jarvis spoke with some pride. Although he didn't know Harvey Amlaka very well, Harvey Amlaka could make his husband persistently ask him to call and contact him for a month. There must be something in common with Mr. Tony Stark. The third update is here. Please continue asking for votes and reading. This is really important to me. Chapter 23 Tony's Light Bulb. Harvey followed Tony into Tony's underground research room. It is very advanced here. Some things that could only be displayed on a screen are now presented using stereoscopic projection. Harvey had seen it on a movie in his previous life, but now he was actually here, so he looked around with interest. Harvey Amlaka, you make me feel like you know a lot of things. So have you ever heard of aliens? Tony noticed that Harvey Amlaka did not show any surprise, but was just interested, so he asked as he walked towards a table. I know what I need to know. If you want to talk about anything, just say it. Harvey's eyes flashed when he heard this and he spoke. How much do you know about aliens? Tony Stark heard Harvey Amlaka's words and asked directly. I know a little bit more. For the sake of the feast, I can answer 3 questions for you. So it depends on what you want to know from me. Harvey casually found a comfortable chair and sat down, smiling. Tony Stark saw Harvey Amlaka smiling as if he understood everything. As expected, Harvey Amlaka was very mysterious. Is Blue Star really in a very dangerous situation as Coulson said? So Tony Stark thought for a moment and tentatively asked the question he wanted to know most at the moment. Blue Star is not dangerous at all now. But it will become dangerous in a few years. Harvey heard this and spoke. When exactly will that be in a few years? Tony Stark's eyes shrank when he heard these words. Does it matter when exactly it is when you know it will become dangerous in a few years? Harvey asked with a smile. Let me think about it. When Tony Stark heard these words, he suddenly woke up from the anxiety in his heart. Tony Stark's mind began to think wildly. He didn't know exactly where Harvey Amlaka came from, but he somehow felt that everything Harvey Amlaka said was true. These were 3 rare opportunities to ask questions, and one of them had already been used, letting him know that a great danger would come in the next few years. Then the second question is, are there any aliens who can become allies of us humans? If so, how can I get in touch with them? Tony Stark thought for a moment and asked another question. There is an old saying in the Celestial Empire, those who are not of my race must have different hearts. It's not uncommon for human beings to have constant wars just because of different races. But when do you think the majority of humanity will unite together and become allies? Harvey did not answer directly but asked rhetorically. When everyone has a common enemy. After hearing this, Tony Stark thought for a moment and understood. So before there is such a powerful enemy, alliance or non-alignment has little effect. You will understand this question if you think about it yourself, so it does not count as an answer to your second question. So I can tell you approximately when the danger that affects the universe will appear. If nothing else happens, it will be 9 years later. You will unite by then. Harvey heard this and spoke. 9 years later. 2017. Who are you, Harvey Amlaka, and how do you know what's going to happen in the future? If there really is such a powerful enemy, then why don't you feel scared or worried at all? Tony Stark heard Harvey Umbraca mention the exact time, and also stated that a powerful enemy would appear at that time and threaten the entire universe. As for who I am, this is beyond the scope of the answer. As for you asking me why I'm not afraid. Because of the fear of not being able to solve anything, what's going to come will come. Harvey spread his hands and said with a smile. Do you want to say that he is afraid of Thanos? Harvey is definitely scared at the moment. But that's only for now, as long as he is allowed to evolve, he has nothing to fear. If Thanos appears at that time, if he is not sure of defeating him yet, he will go to other universes directly. As long as he gets more hero templates, will he not be able to run away if he can't beat him? Of course, Harvey can also understand Tony Stark's current mood, and he must also feel that it is full of mystery, but this is exactly what Harvey wants. I have answered your 2 questions, and you have one last chance. You have one last chance to ask questions. After that, you will have to see if I am in the mood to answer. Harvey issued a friendly reminder. He is not communicating with Tony Stark as death, but as Harvey to make Tony Stark more curious about himself. So Harvey wouldn't mind giving Tony Stark a little more information. Tony Stark is a man cursed with knowledge. The more he knows, the more he will act. Coulson thought you were approached by someone with superpowers. I want you to join the Avengers. Why didn't you join? Tony Stark thought about it and asked one last question. Are you sure that's the last question? Harvey asked in surprise when he heard this. Just answer my question. Tony Stark knew he had learned enough. As for whether what Harvey Amlaka said is true or false, we only need to wait and see in the near future. Because the original intention of the Avengers that Nick Fury wants to form may be good, but the development of things often deviates from the original intention. In the end, it will definitely become a tool of politicians, and you need to look at the faces of politicians before you act. And I don't want to be told what to do. What I want to do is entirely up to me, so I didn't choose to join. After hearing this, Harvey thought for a while and answered. You can find ways to deal with the orders of political leaders. Tony Stark heard this and spoke. Tony Stark, you don't have to try to win me over to join you. Now you and I can sit here and have a friendly exchange because there is no grudge or other complicated relationship between us. So don't try to do things that you can't do, otherwise it will only lead to consequences that you can't afford. Harvey took a deep look at Tony Stark and said calmly. Tony Stark is a person who is cursed by knowledge and is difficult to be understood by others. Therefore, Tony Stark's heart may not be as great as protecting Blue Star, but he definitely has the idea of defending the people around him. Because of this idea, Tony Stark will continue to think of ways to take various preventive measures. Even if they are teammates of Tony Stark, as long as they are strong enough, they will be regarded as objects that need to be guarded against in case of emergencies. Even now Tony Stark has not officially joined the Avengers. But Tony Stark now knows something about the future, even if it's not 100% certain. Tony Stark has also begun to want to join forces with others to deal with the future, so I want to persuade him to join him at this time. Maybe Tony Stark wants to find a friend to act with so that he doesn't have to keep his secret in his heart. It may also be that Tony Stark feels that if he can join with him, he will be the best help. Regardless of the reason, Harvey cannot join the Avengers. The look in Tony Stark's eyes when he looked at Harvey Amlaka gradually turned from a smile to a calm one, making him feel a chill to his bones. I won't persuade you anymore. I was wrong. Don't look at me like that. So Tony Stark immediately gave up the idea of winning over and apologized proactively. After talking to Harvey Amlaka just now, he realized that the mystery of Harvey Amlaka might be far more than that. So he wanted to win over the other party to join his side, but now that he thought about it, his ideas were a little too much. About what I talked to you about, whether it's aliens or the future, you can tell others if you want. But don't expose me, I don't want my peaceful life to be disrupted now. When Harvey saw that Tony Stark had given up, he didn't care about it further, but gave him a reminder. Even if you don't remind me, I won't tell anyone these things casually. After all, even I have a hard time accepting it. In only 9 years, we may face an unimaginable enemy. Now I feel more and more that knowing more is not a good thing. Tony Stark sighed after hearing this, slumped down on a chair, and spoke. He made a steel suit and accidentally came into contact with the unknown creature death that he couldn't understand. After understanding him, he directly opened the door to a new world. The world he is now exposed to and the things he knows are unknown to countless people. A crisis won't come just because you are worried, so you don't have to worry too much. And there are still 9 years left. Depending on your brain, you should be able to create a lot of miracles in 9 years, right? Harvey saw that Tony Stark was like a salted fish without dreams and said, 9 years, I wish I had that long life. Harvey didn't say it was okay, but when he mentioned 9 years, it made Tony Stark even more depressed. You mean your light bulb, the thing that puts a burden on your body? Harvey's eyes flashed when he heard this, glanced at Tony Stark, and said, Bulb. You call the arc reactor a light bulb? Do you understand what the crystallization of technology and wisdom is? Tony Stark was originally a little depressed, but as soon as the word light bulb came out, he stood up instantly and wanted to argue with reason. 2 updates today, 6,000 words. Chapter 24 Treating Tony. Putting aside its function, is its appearance really very different from that of a light bulb? Harvey said with a smile when he saw Tony Stark looking like he was jumping in a hurry. What a good one, putting aside functions. Tony Stark also laughed angrily when he heard Harvey's attitude of ignoring the facts. He wanted to tell Harvey about the capabilities of the arc reactor. But soon, he realized that Harvey Amlaka just used these words deliberately to make himself not be so negative. Although your words don't sound very nice, thank you anyway. So Tony Stark, who came to his senses, also said thank you. And you are right, this arc reactor has put some burden on my body. I have tried changing some elements, but I haven't found any replacement elements yet. Immediately, Tony Stark opened the clothes on his chest, exposing the arc reactor on his chest to the air, and said with a helpless expression on his face. Although the palladium element has not caused any problems to his body yet, let alone affect his body. However, he himself knew that if he continued to use the current arc reactor, palladium poisoning would kill him soon. In addition to finding replacement elements, there is a way to return your body to normal and extend your life. Harvey's heart moved when he heard this, and he spoke. If you said that if you take out the shrapnel in the heart and don't use the steel armor in the future, you don't have to say it. When I knew there was an external threat, without my steel armor, I was no better than sitting on the ground waiting to die. Tony Stark waved his hand and said directly. If Rhodes had promised himself to be the pilot of the steel armor before, he would have never tried the power and feeling of driving the steel armor. Then even without anyone else's explanation, he would find a reliable doctor to perform surgery to remove the shrapnel. But he has already experienced the steel armor, and he also knows that there will be many dangers in Blue Star's future. How could he be willing to just be an ordinary person, even if this ordinary person was rich? But Tony Stark knows that when the real crisis comes, money is not everything. Of course it's impossible for me to say something as low-level as persuading you to have surgery and never use steel armor again. But since you don't want to hear it, just pretend I didn't say anything. Harvey didn't want to say anything after hearing this. It's not surgery, what method is that? Tony Stark heard this and looked at Harvey M. Locke with a confused look on his face. Let's talk about your favorite piece of steel armor. Your original intention in calling me here was probably to show me your technological achievements. Hearing this, Harvey ignored Tony Stark's questions and came to a suit of armor with interest. Tony Stark looked at Harvey M. Locke and felt a little regretful that he didn't want to talk about it anymore. Harvey M. Locke is an extremely mysterious person, as if he knows countless things. Since he said he has a solution, he must be extraordinary. I just thought I missed the opportunity to know. Let's not talk about the armor for now. How about we continue the topic we just talked about? Tony Stark struggled internally, wanting to bring the topic back to how to solve the palladium element that poisoned him, with some discussion and request in his tone. Forget it, I'll help you this time, extend your hand. After hearing this, Harvey turned and glanced at Tony Stark, pretended to ponder for a moment, and spoke. Does this have anything to do with solving my physical problems? Tony Stark stretched out his hand when he heard this and asked. According to my estimation, you will be unconscious for a minute or two, and you will be fine soon. Harvey held Tony Stark's hand with his left hand and reminded him. Tony Stark heard that he would be unconscious for a minute or two. Before he could react and say something, his vision went black and he lost consciousness instantly. Then, some life energy was passed to Harvey's left hand to maintain Tony Stark's vital signs. At the same time, Harvey's index finger sliced open the skin of Tony Stark's chest. Tony Stark's heart is exposed, and ordinary people would feel uncomfortable when they suddenly see a living heart and other internal organs. However, when Harvey saw this bloody scene, his eyes did not change at all, but he concentrated. The veins in Tony Stark's body wrapped around everything else, and it was extremely clear to him. The power of the void condensed in Harvey's right hand glowed with purple light, turned into countless threads as thin as silk, penetrated into Tony Stark's body, and took out the remaining shrapnel. Subsequently, under the infusion of life energy given by Harvey, some minor injuries in Tony Stark's body were still scratches on the body surface, and they recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. Harvey laid Tony Stark flat on the ground, and placed the shrapnel removed from his body directly on the table nearby. The chest was torn open to remove the shrapnel and healed, all in 10 seconds. With the infusion of life energy, less than 2 minutes passed before Tony Stark woke up. Tony Stark felt that his eyesight had gone dark, and when he opened his eyes again, what he saw was the ceiling. Tony Stark immediately got up, and strangely, he stood up easily without much effort. And his eyesight seemed to have gotten better. Not only that. The faint stinging pain in his chest that had always given him a headache was now extremely clear-headed and relaxed. Make Tony Stark feel like his body has been completely healed. Tony Stark is not young now. He is already 38 years old and has no major physical problems. But as we age, the various senses and functions of the body will naturally decline. For example, some parts of the body may feel sore, which is a minor problem. But now the slight soreness that I felt for a long time has completely disappeared. What's the principle? Tony Stark looked at Harvey M. Locke and asked incomprehensibly. You don't have to worry about the principle. I helped you remove the shrapnel from your body, and I have completely removed the palladium poisoning from your body. It gives you more time to find alternative elements. When Harvey heard this, he had no idea of explanation, and simply answered what he had done. He has the ability to absorb the life energy of living things and heal himself. Naturally, the life energy can also be separated to achieve the ability to help other people heal. To win over Tony Stark to believe in the void, there are several steps. But the first and most important step is to make Tony Stark feel the feeling of his body being healed, rejuvenated, and strengthened. No one can resist the feeling of having a longer life and making your body look younger, or even stronger. As long as Tony Stark experiences this feeling, then Tony Stark will get his father's notes and create new elements with them. He will never be trapped by palladium poisoning again, and Tony Stark will never forget how he feels now. Therefore, whenever the time comes, Tony Stark will take the initiative to ask him without Harvey's deliberate persuasion, in order to gain the opportunity to enhance his physical body. When he formally explains it to Tony Stark, it will easily arouse Tony Stark's desire, and he will naturally believe in the void and join the void. When Tony Stark heard that the palladium element had completely disappeared, he quickly ran to the table nearby, opened the box, and took out the palladium element tester. After testing it, I found that the trace amount of palladium in my body had completely disappeared. Tony Stark looked in disbelief. Immediately, Tony Stark smelled some blood. Following the smell, Tony Stark found some small shrapnel that looked a little black with blood on the table 10 meters away. Tony Stark closed his eyes and felt it, and found that there was really no strange feeling in his chest. Mirror! Tony Stark came to a screen and shouted. Jarvis turned the screen directly into a mirror, reflecting Tony Stark's current appearance. Tony Stark opened his clothes and looked at his chest. There was still a little blood on his chest, but he didn't see any wounds. Jarvis, how long have I been unconscious? Tony Stark asked after seeing this scene. Sir, you were unconscious for a total of 72 seconds. Jarvis had been looking here and answered directly when he heard the question. Harvey M. Baraka, is this your superpower? Tony Stark looked at Harvey M. Locke 10 meters away and asked in disbelief. That's just a small means, but according to your knowledge, you can use superpower to understand it. Harvey nodded lightly and said. If there is a fight in the future and someone on our side is injured, if you help treat it, wouldn't it make you invincible? Tony Stark was extremely excited when he heard these words. He strode quickly to Harvey and said with great anticipation. Tony Stark, I know you're excited right now. But don't forget what I just told you. Harvey knew Tony Stark would be excited, but he didn't expect Tony Stark to be so excited, reminded him. When Tony Stark heard this reminder, his originally excited head calmed down a lot. Harvey M. Locke, I don't even know how to repay you. Tony Stark held Harvey's hand and said with an extremely serious expression. He originally just wanted to find information from Harvey M. Locke and show off his achievements to Harvey M. Locke. But tonight's experience made him learn too many things, and his body was actually healed by Harvey M. Locke. I just bought Stark Industries stock not long ago. I'm counting on you to buy up Stark Industries stock. If you, the chairman, die and the stock plummets, I will suffer a big loss. So I'm just helping you casually. It's not a favor. Harvey said with some joking upon hearing the words. Of course, it is impossible for him to directly propose how Tony Stark should repay him. Compared with directly asking for something, favors are often more difficult to repay. But Tony Stark heard these words and wanted to say something. Okay, there's no need to talk about this anymore. Just remember not to expose my name. And I came here because you said you had food here. It's been so long, where is my dinner? Hearing this, Harvey interrupted what Tony Stark wanted to say and directly changed the subject. Jarvis. Tony Stark saw that Harvey didn't want to continue talking about this topic, so he asked along the way. Dinner is ready and placed on the second floor. It's just that, sir, your conversation was lively, so I didn't interrupt. Jarvis responded immediately. Then go up and eat. Tony Stark looked at Harvey and said. Harvey nodded and walked up with Tony Stark. Chapter 25 Destroying Records. You shouldn't go back so soon, right? I haven't shown you my steel armor yet. As Tony was walking, he suddenly remembered and said, "The nights in New York are not peaceful, but Harvey M. Barca should have nothing to fear." So he directly made a reservation and wanted Harvey M. Laka to stay here for a while longer. "Then you have to prepare another supper for 100 people for me." Harvey did not refuse after hearing this, but just stated his request to stay here longer. "Didn't you just want to have dinner? Do you want some midnight snacks? Or is this some price that comes with that?" Tony Stark asked when he heard that Harvey hadn't even eaten dinner yet, thinking about the midnight snack. "So be it." Harvey nodded slightly when he heard this. Harvey couldn't guarantee what changes would happen when Tony Stark joined the Void in the future. However, Tony Stark's appetite will definitely not be bad in the future, so explain in advance to leave a little impression on Tony Stark. It will also allow Tony Stark to accept it better when the time comes. "What did you two talk about?" Pepper asked curiously when she saw Tony and Harvey M. Laka walking up. "We talked about the future of Blue Star and my scientific and technological achievements." Tony asked casually. "This is the excuse again," Pepper said speechlessly after hearing these familiar words. "I'm not lying to you. I really talked about Blue Star's future." Tony paused after hearing this and said seriously. I know, the topics between you two are just that. Beautiful women, fine wine, sports cars, technology, and the future." Pepper rolled her eyes and said. "Correction, not just chatting. With our status, this is not just a chat, we can truly participate and change." Tony corrected him seriously after hearing this. Just as Tony was bickering with Pepper, Harvey had already arrived at the dining table and started eating directly. While Tony Stark and Pepper were chatting, they noticed that Harvey M. Laka was feeding the food in front of him into his mouth in an elegant dining way at an extremely fast speed. "I've heard rumors, but when I saw it with my own eyes, I still had a feeling of disbelief," Pepper said in shock when she saw the dishes piled up crazily, but Harvey's eating speed did not slow down at all. "I can't believe it, but it's true." Tony touched his chest when he heard this and said. "Well, but Tony, why do I feel that you have become a lot younger?" Pepper nodded, then looked at Tony and asked. "Maybe it's because I'm in a good mood right now, right?" Tony didn't pay attention when he heard this and said casually. The shrapnel in his body was directly removed, and the palladium poisoning in his body was also directly removed. Although as long as he continues to use the arc reactor and drive the steel armor, he will continue to be poisoned by palladium over time. However, with Harvey Ambala around, he didn't have to refuse the problem of poisoning. It could be said that he had no worries at all. When Harvey heard this, he glanced at Tony Stark and said nothing. "No, the wrinkles on your face are gone. You can see for yourself." After hearing this, Pepper took a mirror, handed it to Tony Stark, and said. Tony Stark looked at himself in the mirror, as if he was a few years younger, and his appearance had changed to look like he had just turned 30. "Have you developed any new technology?" Pepper looked at Tony and asked extremely seriously. Tony is 38 years old, which is no longer considered young. Although his hair is not grey, there will naturally be some wrinkles on his face. But now Tony looks like he is several years younger, his skin looks more delicate and handsome. Knowing how to keep your appearance young is a problem that every adult woman will worry about. Pepper is also a woman and of course she wants to know how this is done. Of course, Pepper's first suspicion was that Tony Stark had developed some new technologies. After all, this was Tony's strength. "I'm not a geneticist or pharmacy major. How can I possibly develop a potion that can maintain youth or even restore youth?" Tony Stark shook his head when he heard this and said directly. "Then why are the wrinkles on your face gone?" Pepper heard this and looked at Tony, wanting to know the real situation. "I do not know either." Tony Stark also shook his head in confusion when he heard this, looking like I didn't know either. Immediately, Tony Stark glanced at Harvey M. Laka who was frantically destroying food. Although it is not known what Harvey M. Laka did, some changes in his body must be related to Harvey M. Laka. "I have some things to go down first." "Pepper, don't come down. I'll tell you what I need to tell you. Don't pry when you don't want to tell you." Immediately, Tony thought of something, gave Pepper instructions, and walked to the underground research room. Before going down, Tony stood at the top of the stairs and glanced at Harvey M. Laka. When he found that Harvey M. Laka didn't care about his actions, he felt relieved. Pepper was a little frustrated when she saw Tony was about to go down again and told herself not to follow him. He just went his own way. Tony Stark has just entered his underground research room. Jarvis, scan my body. And compare it to my previous body. Tony Stark immediately instructed. When Jarvis heard the instruction, a red light also started scanning directly. Sir, it is detected that the cell activity in your body has been strengthened, making your body stronger. And no disease is currently plaguing you, and you are 6 years younger than you were yesterday. Cellularly speaking, you are now the same person you were when you were 32 years old. It's like being a child again. After Jarvis scanned it, he released 2 stereoscopic projections to explain the situation. Rejuvenation. Harvey M. Locke, what on earth did you do to me? Tony Stark looked at himself in the stereoscopic projection, and the model also looked younger. After hearing these words, he truly realized the changes in his body. Harvey M. Locke not only removed the shrapnel for himself and removed the palladium accumulated in his body, but also made himself younger. Tony Stark knows that humans have been studying lifespan and genes for a long time. It's just that after so long, there are still many diseases that humans cannot deal with and treat, let alone develop effective drugs and methods to extend human lifespan. But now Harvey M. Locke not only directly cured the disease in his body, but also enhanced his cells and rejuvenated him? What kind of superpower this is completely beyond Tony Stark's knowledge. If Harvey M. Locke spreads this method of rejuvenation, even if it requires paying a sky-high price of money, I don't know how many rich people want to rejuvenate. This favor was much greater than he imagined. Sir, it's hard for me to explain this to you. Maybe it will be easier for you to see it yourself. Jarvis heard Tony's words and directly released an image projection. Tony looked at the projection and noticed that the time marked under the image was not long, only about a minute. Tony fell into a coma after seeing himself shaking hands with Harvey M. Locke. Immediately, Tony saw his chest being cut open directly by Harvey M. Locke's fingers. Harvey M. Locke's fingers, which looked like nothing or even ordinary fingers, seemed to turn into extremely sharp scalpels at that moment. Directly cutting open his skin, Harvey M. Locke's hand released a large amount of purple thread-like things, which drilled directly from his chest into his heart. The purple thread accurately and quickly removed the shrapnel from his body. In less than 10 seconds, his skin healed directly at a speed visible to the naked eye. And after all this was done, Harvey M. Locke stood aside. Harvey M. Locke seemed to think about it before laying his body flat on the ground. The video lasted until he woke up. After watching it, Tony Stark couldn't help but drag his chin. Is this just a small trick? Tony Stark murmured in disbelief as he recalled every word he had spoken with Harvey Umbraca in his mind. Just the unknown healing ability displayed by Harvey M. Locke and his hands that were as sharp as blades were already extraordinary. And this may just be the tip of the iceberg for Harvey M. Locke. Tony Stark can't even imagine how much power Harvey Umbraca can still show. Although he is a super genius, his vision is still limited to the known range of mankind, and superpowers are areas he has never understood. Jarvis destroyed it along with this video record of me chatting with Harvey M. Locke tonight. After a while, Tony Stark calmed down and gave instructions. Sir, this is extremely valuable information. Are you sure you want to destroy it? Instead of saving it in a private server? Jarvis heard this instruction and asked. Even though it's artificial intelligence, it also knows that what we're talking about tonight is very valuable imagery. Destroy it, don't keep any records. Otherwise, if word of what happened tonight spreads accidentally, it will only bring about unpredictable disasters. Tony said seriously after hearing this. Although Tony is very confident in his technology, he cannot guarantee that his servers and systems will not be hacked. If someone is hacked and sees this tonight's image, it will not only bring trouble to Harvey M. Locke, but may also make him a sinner who kills other people. Okay, destroying. Jarvis heard the instructions and immediately started destroying them. 3 updates sent, this is the first update. Chapter 26 The Nature of Humanity. After Tony Stark saw that the progress bar of image destruction was full, he put his hands on the table and felt relieved. I don't know when my back was covered with cold sweat, but Tony Stark knew why this was happening. When people see beautiful things or abilities that are mysterious but contain infinite possibilities, they will feel curious and excited. So Harvey M. Locke cured him and he was naturally excited when his body got better. And thinking about the enemies that may appear in the future, he thinks this is a very invincible superpower. Because as long as Harvey M. is here, they don't need to be too afraid of getting hurt, as long as they don't die. But when people really encounter a mystery that is beyond recognition and understanding, they can realize the dangers brought by this mystery. The first reaction is no longer excitement and curiosity, but an overwhelming fear stemming from biological instinct. After Tony Stark witnessed the process of Harvey Umbrica healing himself, he was filled with fear. If the news that Harvey M. Locke possesses this healing power comes to light, I don't know how many people want to find Harvey M. Locke in order to cure diseases that cannot be cured by current technology and extend their lifespan. But in the image just now, Harvey M. Locke not only showed the ability to heal. There is also purple energy whose specific function is unknown but acts like an arm, and Harvey's fingers are as sharp as blades. Obviously Harvey M. Locke still has the ability to protect himself, otherwise it would never be possible to treat him and let him know these things at the risk of exposure. Have you destroyed the image? At this time, Harvey's voice sounded behind Tony Stark. I saw that image, I can't help but destroy it. When Tony Stark heard these words, he turned around, looked at Harvey who was walking into the underground research room, and said with a wry smile. I know you may be afraid of me, but don't worry, if I were your enemy, I wouldn't help you. Harvey said calmly after hearing this. Then why are you approaching me? Tony Stark heard these words and asked. Tony Stark, before you said this, weren't you thinking too much? Have you forgotten that you contacted me for a month in a row? Harvey said a little speechlessly after hearing this. Although he intended to impress Tony Stark so that he could later lure him into joining the Void. But he didn't expect that Tony Stark would be like a man possessed and contact him continuously. So in order not to let Tony Stark bother him, Harvey got through the phone to see what Tony Stark wanted to do. Tony Stark heard this curse and wanted to refute, but after thinking about it, he had indeed contacted him, and for a moment he had no words to refute. My actions all depend on my mood, so you don't have to worry too much. Let's talk about your technology. Harvey saw that Tony Stark wanted to argue with him, but couldn't say anything, so he took the initiative to let Tony Stark go and talked about the armor. The latest ones I'm developing now are Mark IV and Mark V. One is focused on combat, and the other is focused on lightweight and portable. These are the crystallization of my wisdom. They can fly at full speed at high altitudes and reach a maximum speed of Mach 2. The material used is that of aerospace satellites, which is hard and cold resistant. It is not afraid of firearms and bullets, and it also has moves such as palm blasters. Tony Stark also became interested when he heard this, and immediately came to the two armors and proudly introduced them. In just over a month, you've improved the armor to perform like this, which sounds great. Your armor should be even more powerful in the future. But this also means that no matter how you improve it, the biggest weakness of your armor is yourself. Don't say I didn't warn you. In a battle with the enemy, if you have a weakness that cannot be solved but is easily discovered, you will easily die. After hearing this, Harvey lightly tapped the armor with his right hand, and a clang sounded. I've thought about this weakness, but I can't change it now. Because no matter how good my brain is, I am still a human being who will grow old, get injured, and die. When Tony Stark heard what Harvey M. Locke said, he did not deny it and admitted this shortcoming. There is not much difference between piloting a steel armor and piloting a fighter jet in combat, except that his technology is stronger. Once the armor or fighter jet you are driving is damaged, you will be exposed to the danger of combat. There was a possibility of death at any time, so his initial idea was to find Colonel Rhodes to cooperate with him. He has an extremely smart mind, and Rhodes has extremely rich combat experience. Together, the two can better unleash the power of the steel armor. It's just that Rhodes didn't want to understand and just gave him a slap in the face, so he became the driver himself. The words just now were naturally said by Harvey deliberately to remind Tony Stark of his fragile nature. Just now? So that means you have a method. Now Harvey heard these words, glanced at Tony Stark, and spoke. I want to strengthen my body to improve the biggest weakness of the armor, which is to develop genetics. However, when genetic medicines are developed that have no side effects and are suitable for the human body, the testing process must be against human ethics. That's why I never entered the field of genetics. Tony Stark also expressed some of his thoughts after hearing this. Tony Stark, how do you think humans can be called human beings? When Harvey heard Tony's words, his eyes flashed and he asked. Perhaps when someone has powers that are different from humans, they want to suppress themselves and blend in with humans, hoping not to be regarded as aliens but to be called human beings. But to put it bluntly, even if there are no superpowers among humans, there are still differences between people, such as wealth and power. Relying on the little power in their hands, there are countless people who want to take advantage and gain wealth. Human nature is selfish and greedy. As long as people have the opportunity, they will naturally want to get more and control more. And when you have this opportunity, you don't grasp it and use it well. You deceive yourself and deliberately suppress yourself to cater to the weak, hoping to be regarded as an ordinary person. To Harvey, this idea was just stupid and mediocre. Although he had the power of the void for nearly 3 years without really thinking about it, he was finally reminded by Nick Fury. After letting him think about it for a while, he realized that his power came from the void, and he accepted himself as he was now. The thing you desire? Are you talking about a male or a female? Tony Stark asked, wanting to know what kind of question Harvey was referring to. The questions I ask are not about male and female, but about what humans inherently desire. Harvey turned around when he heard this, looked directly into Tony Stark's eyes, and said with a smile. The nature of human beings cannot be reduced to one type, because different people have very different desires and needs. Tony Stark heard this, pondered for a moment, and said. Human beings can be arrogant, have low self-esteem, be kind and be selfish, but that is not their different personalities, nor their essence. The essence of human beings is the desire to survive. In order to survive, human beings will crave power, and rely on power to get more of what they want. Profound knowledge, powerful force, a high and powerful position, and even countless different talents, as long as they are different from others, they are strength. Since ancient times, history in various parts of the world has tended to be dominated by men, but there have also been cases where women have reached the highest positions. This means that women also desire power, but it is more difficult for women to obtain power, so it has been less common since ancient times. But as long as a person has a slightly better or superior identity than others, people will make conscious and unconscious distinctions for themselves. I don't bother to associate with people who are far inferior to me, and I may even be ashamed of it if I even come into contact with them. History is full of such examples, even you and me are no exception. Do you still think that the nature of human beings needs to be divided into men and women? Harvey said slowly while looking at the steel armor. Tony Stark wanted to refute, but after thinking about it carefully, he didn't know where to refute. It is true that people have different personalities. But the essence is to survive. After they can survive, they will crave more things. Such as excellent living conditions, superior status, and all kinds of things. You mean to call me unreasonable? However, Tony Stark, who thought about what Harvey Amberica was talking to him about, thought about it and realized what he was talking about, and said with some emotion. I didn't say that, I just reminded you of human nature. As for what you are thinking, I don't know. Although the essence of human beings is to survive and gain more power. But when you want more power, ask yourself if you're really ready. If you're not mentally prepared, it's not a bad thing to be conservative. Harvey's words were like a voice of seduction, subtly shaking some of Tony Stark's inherent concepts. There may not be any immediate results now, but when Tony Stark desires more power and overcomes his current greatest weakness, then this wavering will affect some of the decisions and actions made by Tony Stark. I already had your dinner just now, so I won't have a midnight snack here. I help you get rid of palladium poisoning. Although I do it casually, it doesn't mean that I will help you get rid of palladium poisoning again in the future. So don't take chances, make good use of the extended time, and try to find new elements to replace palladium to solve the fundamental problem of palladium poisoning. Harvey looked at Tony Stark, who was deep in thought, said a few words, then turned and left. Tony Stark was left alone in the underground research room, his eyes flashing and his brain spinning. Second update. Chapter 27 Tony's Thoughts. Mr. Harvey M. Locke, where is Tony? Pepper asked when she saw Harvey coming up from the underground research room. He should come up on his own after a while, or you can go down to find him. I've already finished my dinner, so I'm leaving first. Harvey smiled when he heard this and said. Are you leaving? That's right, it's already very late. You and Tony seem to have a great chat. I hope Mr. Harvey M. Locke will be our guest again next time. Pepper was a little surprised when he heard this, but after looking at the clock on the wall, he found that it was already past 9 o'clock in the evening. In an hour or so, New York would become less peaceful, so it was normal for Harvey M. Locke to leave now. Well, if I have a chance next time. Goodbye then, Miss Pepper. Harvey nodded slightly when he heard this, said goodbye and went out. After Harvey left, Pepper asked directly in the lobby on the first floor. Jarvis, Is Tony okay? Can I go down now? Sir is fine, he is thinking about something now. I don't recommend you to stay alone and disturb me. When Sir thinks clearly, he will come directly. Jarvis also gave suggestions after hearing this. All right. Pepper was originally just a little worried about Tony, but now that she heard the advice, she suppressed the idea of going down and taking a look. Tony Stark, who was in the underground research room, was also thinking in his heart at this time. According to his wisdom, it would not be difficult to start studying genetics now and then develop a potion that would make his body stronger, it would just take some time. It's just that he had considered doing something tragic before, so he never considered it. But now that he heard Harvey Ambaleka's words, his original firm belief was slightly shaken. Jarvis, after listening to my chat with him, what do you think? After hesitating for a moment, Tony Stark began to ask other people's opinions. Sir, I don't quite understand what a human being is, because I'm just an AI. But to summarize what you said, it can be roughly divided into 3 points. The first point is that the steel armor is very powerful, but no matter what, there is an unavoidable and difficult to change weakness, and that is you, sir. The second point is that you have the ability and confidence to solve this weakness, but you cannot transcend human ethics, so you have never touched the genetics that can solve the weakness. The third point is what Mr. Harvey Amlaka is telling you. Sir, if you want to make changes, have you already thought about whether it is necessary to do that? If you want to do that, are you mentally prepared? According to my observation, sir, you obviously haven't fully considered these premises yet. So I suggest that you first focus on finding new elements to replace palladium. If you can't guarantee that there will be no side effects when driving the armor, then you don't need to consider overcoming the fatal weakness of the steel armor at all. You won't be able to think of the answer right now, but by then you may have made your choice. Jarvis heard Tony's question and responded. Thanks, Jarvis. Tony was stunned for a moment when he heard Jarvis's words, and suddenly felt that his thoughts suddenly became clear, and he thanked him. Harvey Amlaka is a person with superpowers, and he is a super genius with a good mind. However, because they come into contact with different people, their visions are completely different. Only by ensuring that he could drive the steel armor could he continue to understand and get in touch with the world that he had just stepped into, which was completely different from ordinary people. Only by deepening his understanding could he continue to talk freely about his own ideas and thoughts with Harvey Amlaka. Maybe Harvey Amlaka felt that the steel armor he developed had begun to come into contact with Harvey Ambaleka's world. That's why the other party talks so much with me, which expanded his knowledge a lot. But because of this, a question was born in Tony Stark's mind, that is, how old is Harvey Amlaka? Harvey Amlaka has the ability to rejuvenate himself, so the identity he investigated may just be what Harvey Amlaka wants others to see. Where's Harvey Amlaka? Tony Stark thought of this, glanced around and found that Harvey Amlaka was missing, and asked immediately. Mr. Harvey Amlaka has left. Before leaving, he specifically reminded you that he will not always help you treat palladium poisoning and then leave. So you have to quickly find a new element to replace palladium. Because you were thinking just now, you probably didn't hear it. According to my feeling, what Mr. Harvey Amlaka said just now means that you must either find new elements or give up driving the steel armor. Next time you are poisoned and can't find a solution, you will die. Upon hearing this, Jarvis also conveyed what Harvey had just said. Before I knew I was getting younger, I thought about the possibility that I would be poisoned by palladium and asked Harvey Amlaka for help. But after I found out I was getting younger, I didn't think about it that way. When Tony Stark heard these reports, a smile appeared on his face. One is to help heal him, and the other is to help heal him while also making him a few years younger. These are completely different differences. Now he is 6 years younger, and his body is roughly equivalent to that of himself when he was 32 years old, but he is also past 30 and has reached middle age. This time the wrinkles are gone and he looks younger. Others will only think that he took good care of himself or had some surgery. But if he were a few years younger and looked like he was in his 20s, then no matter how he explained it, others would think there was something wrong with him. Not to mention that this may expose Harvey Ambaleka's superpowers, and he himself may be kidnapped and used as a guinea pig. Although he has a steel armor, he is not invincible. If he is targeted by the military, he does not have full confidence to ensure that he will be safe. So Tony Stark completely understands Harvey Ambaleka's reluctance to help himself with too many words. Afterwards, Tony Stark left the underground research room. Faced with Pepper's various curious questions, Tony Stark sometimes explained a few words, while others responded casually. What Pepper is most curious about is the fact that he has become younger. Tony Stark can only insist that he does not know about this. This made Pepper feel a little disappointed. After all, there is no woman who doesn't love beauty and wants to look younger. It's just that Tony Stark seems like he really doesn't know. So Pepper thought for a while and could only assume that Tony met a friend with whom he could chat, which made him feel good and made him look younger temporarily. The third update, a total of 8,000 words. Please vote and follow up. Chapter 28 New Year's Invitation. Harvey drove back home and ordered a bunch of takeaways to be delivered to his manor. Now that he has done what he should do, all he has to do is wait for Tony Stark to come to his door. Except for Tony Stark, there are not many people who can win over at this stage and whose destiny is strong enough. If Hulk Bruce Banner wins over, he should be able to bring him a lot of void energy. It's just that Bruce Banner is still hiding, afraid to face the power of the Hulk in his body. Having great power does not mean to control it, but to destroy the power within the body. He'll make Bruce Banner realize how banal this idea really is, but it's not time to find the Hulk yet. Abomination is a good target. His potential and strength are not as good as those of the Hulk, but he is still quite strong. But Harvey didn't know where the Abomination was imprisoned, so he couldn't find it. Asking General Ross directly may get the answer, but he can't act too high profile yet. In 9 years, before the arrival of the purple sweet potato spirit, he only had to evolve more than 1,000 times, and if he got other hero templates, he could directly face Thanos Hard Steel. And after he obtains the hero template of Voidwalker Kassadin, his scope of activities will not be limited to Blue Star. Instead, he wanders around various planets. Not only can he establish the Void Cult, but there will also be various monsters in the universe for him to hunt. By absorbing the life energy of those monsters, there will definitely be more evolution points for him to evolve. By then, he may have far more than 1,000 evolutions. If only he could get the hero origin of the Void Reaver from the Death Star, and then combine it with other hero templates. Harvey is confident that even if he can't do anything to the Celestials, he definitely doesn't need to worry about the death threat that the Celestials will bring to him. It is now 2008, and there are still 2 months to prepare for 2009. The explosion of superheroes occurred after the Battle of New York in 2012. And his evolutionary efficiency and the speed of acquiring void energy will not become slower as the number of times increases. On the contrary, it will become faster and faster as he evolves more times and becomes stronger and stronger. Thinking of this, Harvey played the game with a smile on his face. After Harvey treated Tony and guided him for a while, Tony Stark is no longer harassing Harvey with his daily killing spree. Tony Stark handed over the company to Pepper. Except for some major matters that required his signature, he spent the rest of the time immersed in research. Because of his conversation with Harvey Amlaka, he saw a wider world. And Tony Stark's body is now younger and more energetic, which has greatly increased the speed of research and development. The Mark models not only stopped at the 4th and 5th generations, but also evolved directly to the Mark 17th generation in just 2 months, with greatly enhanced performance. And because after the shrapnel in Tony Stark's body disappeared, he no longer needed to wear the arc reactor. It only needs to be worn when testing the new steel armor, so the rate of palladium poisoning in Tony Stark's body is greatly slowed down. This also led to Tony Stark's decadent period in which death was imminent. 2 months have passed unknowingly, and the American New Year has arrived, and the whole country is in a festive atmosphere. Tony Stark also contacted Harvey directly on this day, wanting to spend the new year with this man who was very kind to him and considered a friend. Sir, Mr. Harvey Amlaka declined the call in less than 2 seconds. Tony Stark originally thought that after the last time, he would not be rejected when he contacted Harvey Umbrica, but now he couldn't help but swear when he heard Jarvis's words. Yeah, this guy is as difficult to contact as ever. Sir, the other party may think that you are looking for him because you have something to trouble him, so he refuses. Jarvis heard this and said from Harvey's perspective. Jarvis, I didn't expect to hear such cold and realistic words from you. Tony Stark said sadly after hearing Jarvis's words. Then do we still need to keep in touch? After hearing this, Jarvis asked. No, I'll go find him myself. You can help me find someone to prepare lunch. After hearing this, Tony Stark gave a direct warning and drove off by himself. Harvey Amlaka most often lives in the wealthy villa area of Brooklyn. That location was not far from Stark Manor, so it wasn't difficult to find it. In just over half an hour, Tony Stark arrived at a luxurious manor covering an area of thousands of square meters. Tony Stark got out of the car and rang the doorbell. Harvey clicked on the scene at the door to project it on the wall. When he realized that Tony Stark was coming, he opened the door. This guy's extravagance is really excessive. Tony Stark drove in, looked at the surrounding arrangements, and muttered. His Stark Manor has been built very luxuriously, but for the real value lies underground, there are not so many luxurious and useless things. But Harvey's manor seemed to be full of valuable things, and it covered an area much larger than his Stark Manor. Tony Stark had investigated Harvey, so he drove along the corridor to a luxuriously decorated mansion without Harvey's guidance. And Harvey had already opened the door and was waiting for him. You're celebrating the new year, you're not staying at home to celebrate the new year with Pepper, why are you here looking for me? Before Tony Stark could say hello in a friendly way, Harvey's words were heard. I think you will spend the new year alone, so I want to have some fun with you. Tony Stark looked at Harvey, who was wearing home clothes, without feeling embarrassed at all, and said with a smile. Don't do this with me. According to your personality, this is not a reason to find me. Just tell me what you want from me. Harvey waved his hands after hearing this, not believing it at all. You have guessed, but I have asked Jarvis to prepare lunch. Come to my house and chat slowly. Tony Stark paused after hearing this and said. I completely forgot that I would never ask Harvey M. Locke before. You ask Jarvis to add 2 more beef feasts for me on the original basis, and I will go to your house. I will eat more than usual during the Chinese New Year. Harvey heard Tony Stark's words and spoke. Don't talk about 2 cows, even 10 cows won't be a problem. When Tony Stark heard this, he immediately patted his chest and agreed. Okay, I'll change my clothes, please wait for me. Harvey nodded and closed the door. A few minutes later, Harvey walked out, having put on an exquisite suit, showing his elegance and handsomeness. He can wear whatever he wants at home, but when going outside, he still has to wear clothes that suit his status. Harvey opened his garage, thought about it and chose a low-key and practical silver BMW. No wonder there are many young rich women in the upper echelons of New York who want to invite you to banquets. Your appearance, tisk tisk tisk, you have the same demeanor as when I was young. Tony Stark saw Harvey Ambalaika's appearance and elegant movements and said. With Harvey Ambalaika's young, handsome and strong figure, coupled with his very elegant temperament at first sight, it is not surprising that he can make some rich women swoon. Tony Stark, if you don't study your light bulb, why are you paying attention to these gossips? Harvey drove up to Tony Stark's car, lowered the window, and said speechlessly. Of course it's not my concern. Pepper helps me run Stark Industries and attends various events. And you and I are friends to the outside world, so there are many people asking Pepper about you. Don't you occasionally spend the night with some young beauties? Building a relationship with them will not only allow you to enjoy it, but also bring you a lot of convenience. Why are you not interested in them at all? After hearing this, Tony distanced himself from the relationship, but then asked some gossipy questions. Are those young and beautiful women without much status easy to get rid of, or those young rich women? Aren't you more experienced than me? Harvey rolled his eyes when he saw Tony's gossipy look. Makes sense. Tony Stark heard this and understood. Let's go. Harvey said something. Closed the car window and drove off. Tony Stark also drove and quickly chased after him. Only half an hour. Harvey follows Tony Stark to Stark Manor. Because of the Chinese New Year, Stark Manor was slightly decorated. Mr. Harvey M. Laka, long time no see. Pepper saw Harvey Ambalaika's arrival, and a smile appeared on his face. Long time no see, Miss Pepper. Harvey responded politely after hearing this. We're going to have a chat down there. Pepper, please stay here for a while. Tony Stark said it directly. Then he entered the underground research room with Harvey M. Laka. Welcome, Mr. Harvey M. Laka. Jarvis said respectfully after seeing Harvey's arrival. Jarvis put out the table of elements. Tony Stark said it directly. Soon the entire periodic table of elements appeared. I have tried all the elements, but I can't find any replacement elements at all. Harvey M. Baraka, do you think there are really replaceable elements? Tony Stark held his chin in one hand, a look of heaviness on his face. According to his understanding of Harvey M. Laka, he had previously said that he worked hard to find alternative elements to improve the arc reactor. Then it implies that there must be an element in the world that can replace palladium. But no matter how hard he searched, he couldn't find a new element to replace it, which put him into a bottleneck period. I knew you were looking for me for something. Harvey's eyes flashed when he heard this and he spoke. Chapter 29 Tony's Advantages. There's nothing I can do. I've tried every element I know. If you don't look for it, you won't have any direction to start with. Are there elements in the world that you superpowers come into contact with that I don't understand at all or have never even heard of? When Tony Stark heard Harvey's words, he showed some helplessness on his face and said, "It has nothing to do with the world that people with superpowers come into contact with, but it's not impossible to tell you." After hearing this, Harvey thought about it and said, "Originally, they only had to wait for S.H.I.E.L.D. to find Tony Stark and know the difficulties Tony Stark faced, and then they would help Tony Stark. But he can push the process forward a little. It has nothing to do with the world that superpowers come into contact with. So which of these elements can be replaced? Or am I taking into account the chemical transformation that comes with bonding?" Tony Stark asked, extremely confused after hearing this. "Instead of these elements, you are going to create a new element to replace the palladium and stabilize the arc reactor. That way your steel armor will be even more powerful." Harvey heard this and spoke. "Create new elements." When Tony Stark heard this, he immediately started brainstorming. "Tony Stark, I remember your father was a genius scientist like you. Maybe you can get some inspiration from what your father left behind." Harvey heard this and reminded. "Something my father left behind? He left in such a hurry. He didn't leave anything behind." When Tony Stark mentioned his father, his expression became a little complicated and he spoke. "Indeed, your father left this company and huge wealth to you. But don't forget which party your father founded, Stark Industries, had the deepest connection with in the first place." Harvey didn't say it but guided Tony Stark to find out. Tony Stark heard this and thought about it for a while. Combining the history of his father's control of Stark Industries and the organization that is currently most closely connected with Stark Industries, he came up with an answer in his mind. But because of the arc reactor, the relationship between Stark Industries and the military is not as good as before. Where should I go to ask the military for the relics my father left behind in the military? It's just that Tony Stark took into account the current situation and started to think. Obviously, your relationship with the military is quite tense, and it may be difficult for you. But isn't there someone who has extended an olive branch to you? Harvey heard this and spoke. What kind of land bureau are you talking about? Do they have that high level of authority? You have to know that even if they spend $20 million, they can call it a high price. Tony Stark also realized when he heard the military extending an olive branch to him, but his tone was somewhat disgusting. In his opinion, the ambition of the Avengers to be formed is good, but in terms of status and power, Tony Stark does not think that the status of the Homeland Bureau is very high. After all, it's only $20 million, not $200 million. This can be called a high price. That country's land bureau is really poor. In other words, the Bureau of Land and Resources is being squeezed so hard that they are said to be agents but are actually just hard-working workers. When Harvey heard that $20 million had been offered, he had to apply for it step by step. Of course he knew that Tony Stark was talking about Nick Fury raising money to meet with him. They are a bit poor, but since they claim to be agents specializing in handling weird incidents, their authority status in the military should not be low. And whether the authority is high or not, you will know if you ask. So Harvey understood and spoke. "Okay, let me ask." Tony Stark heard Harvey's words and decided to ask after thinking about it. "Jarvis, contact Coulson for me." Tony Stark gave direct instructions, and Jarvis immediately carried out the instructions. And Coulson answered immediately in less than 5 seconds. "Mr. Tony Stark, may I help you with anything?" Coulson's voice immediately rang in the underground research room. Because of Coulson's speed of almost seconds, Tony Stark took a special look at Harvey. Harvey looked at Tony Stark with a look that showed off and complained, and pretended not to see it. "Agent Coulson, my father, Howard Stark, had deep ties with the military in the past, and he should have had a lot of cooperation with the military. I wonder if your military has any relics of my father, Howard Stark." When Tony Stark said these words, there was a slight pause in his words. It was obvious that mentioning his father made him feel a little complicated. "Is there any remnant of Howard Stark's legacy? I can help you investigate the news about your father. Please give me an hour. I will help you investigate if there are any relics left by your father that have not been handed over to you." Coulson heard that Tony Stark really needed help. This was a good opportunity to establish friendship, so he agreed without any nonsense. Okay, then I'm begging you. When Tony Stark heard that he could really help with the investigation, he glanced at Harvey M. Locke. And then said in a serious tone. Give it to me. Coulson responded after hearing this and hung up the communication. If he really finds it for me, then you can say that I owe them a favor. Tony Stark saw Coulson's excited and fast attitude as if he was on steroids, and said. Usually, if you want to get something, you have to pay a price. But I just want to get back your father's remaining relics. The size of this favor depends on what you think about it. Harvey said indifferently after hearing this. Returning the relics can only mean that the relics return to the original owner, but what if I discover new elements through my father's relics? If we improve the arc reactor, then this favor won't be too small. Of course, if it is really developed, I will not forget your kindness in reminding me, Harvey M. Locke. Tony Stark heard this and spoke. These are nothing but trivial matters. Harvey looked at Tony Stark and said with a smile. Although Tony Stark has always been narcissistic and arrogant, and the words he often says are very hard to hear, the fact that he has clear grudges has always been one of Tony Stark's strengths. Even if Tony Stark doesn't say it on the surface, he will remember the kindness that the other party left for him in his heart. As long as the opportunity comes, Tony Stark will find a way to repay that debt. So Harvey didn't mind giving Tony Stark a little spin. After all, Tony Stark can be a very good friend once a friendly friendship is established. Please read and vote. Chapter 30 A Rare Opportunity. Harvey M. Locke, can you answer a question for me? Immediately, Tony Stark looked at Harvey, hesitated, and spoke. You tell me and I'll think about it. Harvey's eyes flickered when he heard this, but he didn't agree immediately. After you treated me last time, my health has improved several times. Not only am I a few years younger, but my physical fitness has also improved a lot. Can that kind of superpower keep me from looking young, but improve my physical fitness? Tony Stark's eyes were a little evasive and he spoke. Since that treatment, Tony Stark can clearly feel that his body has undergone tremendous changes. His 5 senses have become more acute, and his strength and physical strength have been significantly improved. Although the speed of the explosion is not as fast as the physical limit of human beings, it is still far beyond the limit of ordinary people. If he usually stayed up late and worked for several days in a row, his 38-year-old body would have been unable to bear it long ago without taking a break. But after the treatment, he only needed to sleep 3 to 4 hours a day to eliminate any fatigue and maintain a high energy level. Moreover, his mind is more sensitive than before. This is why he has continuously updated and iterated the steel armor in just 2 months. Most importantly, 2 months have passed. Tony Stark didn't feel any side effects in his body. This made him realize that Harvey M. Locke's ability was definitely not just as simple as healing and rejuvenation. Instead, it can directly help people strengthen their bodies, and this strengthening is not just for a short period of time. Last time, Harvey M. Locke treated himself and strengthened his body. His body could easily jump more than 2 meters high. What if Harvey M. Locke didn't just help him treat and strengthen his body, but really wanted to help him further strengthen his body? He doesn't need to specifically develop genetic medicines and then conduct experiments that are contrary to human reason. Tony Stark, didn't I just tell you that if you want to get something, you often have to pay a price? So your idea of having both worlds is impossible. After hearing this, Harvey already knew that Tony Stark had already developed the idea of desiring power, and said slowly. It's just that Tony Stark wants to get a more powerful body and maintain his current appearance without others noticing that his body has changed. This is obviously impossible. Even Harvey himself can't, since he awakened the system and gained the ability from the void. 3 years have passed, and his current appearance has not changed much from what he looked like as an adult. Harvey believes that his appearance will not change not only in the past 3 years, but also in the past 10, 50, or 100 years. Because the power of the void made his life form separate from humans. From now on, the fact that his body is not ordinary will be exposed even if he deliberately hides it. But even if he is exposed by then, his power has evolved to the point where he is not afraid of anything, so he won't care too much. Is there really nothing you can do? Tony Stark said with some disappointment after hearing this. Tony Stark, I should have told you before. My power is not a superpower, it is just a power beyond your understanding for you. You can think of it as a kind of superpower. Harvey said calmly after hearing this. If it's not a superpower, what kind of power is it? Tony Stark asked with some confusion after hearing this. Although your current strength has not exceeded human limits, it has also given you extraordinary physical fitness. This should be enough for you, who is just an ordinary person with physical fitness, right? If you want to be further enhanced, then not only your physical fitness will begin to deviate from the scope of human common sense. The same is true for your lifespan. It will be at least a few hundred years or even 1,000 years or more. I can help you, and even give you power you can't even imagine. After all, to me, this is just a casual thing. But are you sure you are mentally prepared? Harvey glanced at Tony Stark after hearing this and said slowly. Can I be like you and have powerful and incredible power without the help of technology? Tony Stark heard Harvey Ambaleka's words, his eyes were full of shock, and he said in disbelief. You can master incredible power, but it's unlikely that you will reach my level. As for the reason, I won't explain it. If you really want to, you will understand it naturally after you master it. Regarding this question, Harvey did not deliberately hide it, but shook his head. He didn't know what kind of abilities Tony Stark would gain after believing in and joining the Void. The power he has evolved 283 times now is already very terrifying. But this is just his starting point, so it is impossible for Tony Stark to catch up with him. Tony Stark fell into deep thought when he heard these words. Having supernormal strength will be regarded as very powerful by others, such as top athletes who break records time and time again. Not only will people not feel intimidated when they see it, but they will feel admired. But once you break away from the power within the scope of human common sense, you will be regarded as an alien by others and feel a kind of fear towards you. He wanted Harvey to help him strengthen his body, but he didn't want his body and appearance to look too young and let others know that he was an anomaly. That's why he asked Harvey Amlaka that way just now, but the response he got was impossible. If you can have a long lifespan and gain power that far exceeds ordinary people's cognition, it can be said to be the dream of countless people. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many unconstrained and fantasy movies and animations. Now that this opportunity to obtain fantasy power came to him, Tony Stark was a little hesitant. Once he gets it, Pepper, whom he admires and trusts very much, may look at him strangely. And a lifespan of hundreds of years or even longer sounds very wonderful. But as time passed, he still remained young while the people around him grew old and died step by step. Tony Stark felt sad just thinking about that scene. But if he refuses this time, he may also miss an opportunity to completely change his life. Harvey Amlaka, thank you for giving me this opportunity. But can you give me some more time to think about it carefully? So Tony Stark looked at Harvey Umberka and said apologetically. If you are really mentally prepared, just mention it again and I will consider it then. Harvey also had no intention of urging Tony Stark, and did not clearly agree or refuse. Harvey can understand Tony Stark's concerns. But Harvey knew that as long as Tony Stark had the idea of getting more power, he would eventually join the embrace of the Void. Whether I accept it or not, thank you for giving me this opportunity. Tony Stark's eyes flickered when he heard this, nodded, and said gratefully. Chapter 31 Asking for Relics. I'm done talking about it. Let's go up and talk about other things. I wonder if you can give me some face and talk to Pibo. Let me tell you in advance that I did not reveal to her what I was talking to you about. Pibo just wants to talk to you, who is attracted by many rich women. Immediately, Tony Stark spoke. You do not mind. Harvey glanced at Tony after hearing this and said. You look very handsome, but you look much younger than Pibo. She doesn't have that much money and can't afford to support you. As long as you don't tease Pibo deliberately, I don't have anything to mind. Tony Stark waved his hand and said without any worry. Since you don't mind, then I don't care anymore. As for flirting with beautiful women, it has never been my style. I always have others take the initiative to strike up conversations with me. When Harvey heard this, he spread his hands and said with an indifferent expression. Okay, let's go. Tony Stark also felt relieved after hearing this. Just when Tony Stark wanted to leave the underground research laboratory with Harvey. Sir, Mr. Coulson is calling. Do you want to answer the call? Jarvis's voice suddenly sounded. So fast. Tony Stark said with some surprise when he heard this. Coulson helped him investigate his father's relics, and he even expected that Coulson might use words to extend the time to fight for himself and win his favor. Unexpectedly, in just 10 minutes, Coulson called to contact him. If he did it so quickly. It proved that the other party had most likely found his father's relics. Maybe their abilities are a little higher than you think. Harvey heard this and spoke. Then answer it first. After hearing this, Tony Stark also stopped going upstairs and said. After the connection this time, it was no longer just communication but video communication. A black man wearing a black trench coat and a one-eyed patch, Coulson, stood next to him. When the black man looked at Tony's side, he noticed Harvey Ambulacre's figure and his eyes flashed. Tony Stark's first meeting. I'm Nick Fury, director of SHIELD, Coulson's boss. And Harvey Ambulacre, last time an agent of our bureau offended you, I would like to apologize to that agent. Sorry. Nick Fury took the initiative to introduce himself. Director Nick Fury, S.H.I.E.L.D. Aren't you called the Bureau of Land and Resources? Tony Stark was a little surprised to hear this name. Just call me Fury. Given that it wasn't just Tony Stark who mentioned that our bureau's name was too long. Harvey Ambulacre also said our bureau's name was too long. So we've been looking at paring down some names. After all this time of thinking, we finally came up with a name that is simple, direct, and makes people feel at ease upon hearing it. Nick Fury also explained after hearing this. I don't know if the name SHIELD sounds reassuring, but it's much easier to remember than the previous one. Tony Stark said directly after hearing this, his words made people want to beat him. Harvey himself sat down directly, took out his mobile phone and started playing. Nick Fury felt helpless when he saw Harvey Ambulacre not even looking at him. But he also knew that Natasha could easily leave a bad impression that time. Nick Fury didn't find it strange that Harvey Ambulacre showed up at Stark Manor. Harvey Ambulacre now owns a large stake in Tony Stark's company. And basically everyone in the upper echelons of New York knows that Harvey Ambulacre and Tony Stark have become friends. Even if Harvey Ambulacre doesn't have superpowers, the blessing of the goddess of luck will make Harvey Ambulacre's future achievements not too low. Both of them are rich and have similar odors. Not surprisingly. Let's get over the name thing first. Let's talk business. We did find something about your father Howard Stark's belongings. But your father has a very important job in the military, so what he left behind has become a military secret. Nick Fury leaned forward, crossed his hands on the table in front of him, and said with a serious face. I'm talking in a roundabout way, just to say that if I want to get it, it won't be that easy, right? Tony Stark has dealt with the military a lot, so he certainly knows what this kind of person says. No, it's understandable that your father's relics should be returned to you. The main thing is that I want to know something from you before handing it over to you. You are 39 years old now. In all these years, you have never thought of asking the military whether there are any relics of your father left. Now that I remember it, can I ask why? Nick Fury shook his head when he heard this and said. Because this. Tony Stark opened his clothes to reveal the arc reactor. Rather than saying that it was because of Harvey Ambulacre's reminder that he remembered to ask for it. He would rather say that it was because of the arc reactor on his chest. This thing is called the arc reactor. It's very easy to use and it's also the key to me becoming Iron Man. It's just that for some reason, I have to keep it on and can't take it off. I want to find a new element to replace it, but I have tried other elements in the periodic table. It turned out clearly that it wasn't found. So I thought about my father, who was as talented as I was. I want to see if my father left any relics that can give me some inspiration. Tony Stark had a complicated look on his face, explaining why. I understand, I'll ask Coulson to send it to you. I hope your father's relics can bring you some help. Nick Fury looked at the arc reactor with white light flashing on Tony Stark's chest, and spoke without any shock. If Tony Stark doesn't find a replacement element, SHIELD has something that can alleviate the symptoms of palladium. But relief always treats the symptoms rather than the root cause. If Tony Stark wants to survive, he still has to find a way by himself. The steel armor made by Tony Stark has amazing combat effectiveness. After all, this is equivalent to a humanoid fighter jet, and it is more convenient to move than a fighter jet. It can be said that it is not as good as a superpower person. But if Tony Stark doesn't have much life left, then the rare superhero who is expected to win over into the Avengers will be gone. As soon as possible. The complexity on Tony Stark's face disappeared when he heard this, and he nodded slightly. Chapter 32 I have enough money to buy my life. Mr. Harvey Ambulacre, I hope to forgive our SHIELD for the offense. We have no intention of antagonizing you. Nick Fury looked at Harvey M. Laka and took the initiative to say hello. I don't care, as long as you don't continue to bother me. The great mission of saving Blue Star has nothing to do with me, an ordinary person. When Harvey heard this, he looked up at Nick Fury and said, depending on your relationship with Tony Stark, maybe you can also drive a suit and become a superhero in the future. Nick Fury heard this and said, according to the investigation, Tony Stark usually only invites women to his home for parties, and rarely invites men to his home. If Tony Stark invited him, it meant that the two had a close friendship. Tony Stark is extremely reluctant to hand over his core technology to the military. But if it were a good friend who had a close relationship with Tony Stark might give him a steel suit. So when he said this, Nick Fury was also observing Tony Stark. When Nick Fury noticed that Tony Stark's eyes were a little bright, and he seemed to want to see Harvey Umbraca put on the suit, he knew that he had guessed correctly. Let's not talk about whether I wear the steel armor or not. Who said that wearing the armor means you must become a superhero? Nick Fury, the intentional or unintentional moral coercion in your words is enough. Harvey felt that Tony Stark's eyes were a little speechless, but he still looked at Nick Fury and responded directly without politeness. Nick Fury had a friendly attitude toward Harvey Umbraca because he might get the iron armor from Tony Stark. Unexpectedly, the other party would be so disrespectful, which made Nick Fury feel angry in his heart. Harvey M. Laka, I think we have some misunderstandings. Maybe we can talk about it. However, his professionalism still allowed Nick Fury to suppress his thoughts, and spoke with a kind smile on his face. I have nothing to talk to you about. Last time your people pointed a gun at me, I reported it to the FBI and your officials protected me so that you could settle the matter. I can't afford to offend you, why can't I hide from you? But next time you push me hard, I have plenty of money to buy my life. Harvey noticed that Nick Fury stiffened and sneered. When Tony Stark heard these words, his eyes flashed with shock and he looked at Nick Fury. He knew that S.H.I.E.L.D. had gone to find Harvey M. Laka and wanted to win over Harvey M. Laka, but he didn't expect that the other party actually pulled out a gun when testing. Nick Fury heard Harvey M. Laka's threat, noticed Tony Stark's eyes, and had a headache. He also didn't expect that Natasha's previous actions would actually make Harvey M. Laka so disgusted with his S.H.I.E.L.D. However, they had not expected that Tony Stark, who was just a scientist, would suddenly produce an epic-making weapon like the iron armor. What's more, I didn't expect that Harvey M. Laka would actually become friends with Tony Stark, who seemed to have a good relationship. Moreover, Harvey M. Laka's words clearly indicate that he knows about the dark web. If push comes to shove, Harvey M. Laka will pay a huge price to buy their lives, and even if they don't die, they will still have their skins peeled off. He might even die directly. After all, there are terrifying death gods on the dark web who seek life for money. They need to make a lot of preparations to mobilize $20 million, but for a rich man like Harvey M. Laka, they can use it at any time. Moreover, this rich man is still very young. It is not impossible for him to be young and energetic and reckless. Mr. Harvey M. Laka, I am deeply sorry for the actions of our agent. I'm sorry. We are not enemies. If there is a chance in the future, I hope we can truly resolve the misunderstanding. Nick Fury could only give in to this, lowered his head and apologized. Afterwards, Nick Fury hung up the video communication. After hanging up the video communication. Awesome! Tony Stark looked at Harvey M. Laka, gave a thumbs up and said with admiration. Judging from the superpowers Harvey Umbraca showed in front of him, it is obvious that he is not afraid of S.H.I.E.L.D. But Harvey M. Laka never thought of exposing his identity, but directly solved the problem as a young rich man. There's nothing cool or bad about it, it's just what you need to do to maintain your identity and image. Harvey said calmly after hearing this. Understood, but Harvey M. Laka, do you really have no idea of wearing steel armor? I'm already very good at driving steel armor. If it were you, as long as you can understand the functions, you should be even better at driving than me, right? Of course Tony Stark understood, but soon looked at Harvey M. Laka with bright eyes and asked. The performance of the steel armor is the same, but the driver's ability will still affect the performance. Although he didn't know how powerful Harvey M. Laka was, he was obviously much more powerful than himself. If you are interested in it in the future, I will fight with you. Harvey heard this and took a look at the cool-looking steel armor placed against the wall in the innermost part. He considered it and spoke. You can take one away now. It will give you some self-protection capabilities and help you better hide your identity. Tony Stark heard this and spoke. Tony Stark, I understand your thoughts. Now as long as I don't spend money to buy the lives of some people in S.H.I.E.L.D., they can't take action against me, because they were the ones who were wronged in the first place. But if I take it, it won't make it easier for me to hide my identity. On the contrary, those guys from S.H.I.E.L.D. will attack me on the grounds that I am harboring dangerous weapons. Harvey shook his head when he heard this and said. Because he reminded and helped Tony Stark many times, Tony Stark felt that his help was in vain, so he wanted to give him something in return. Harvey doesn't lack anything, so it's enough that Tony Stark has this intention. That seems to be the case. After hearing this, Tony Stark thought about it and understood. He and Harvey America are both one of the richest people in New York, but there are differences between them. As long as he doesn't die, Stark Industries will still be America's technological pioneer. He developed a steel armor, and the military couldn't attack him directly and could only find a good excuse. For example, public opinion or other things can help you get something from him that he doesn't want to hand over. Because the military has no good excuse to ask for it from him, all the steel armors are still in his hands. In any case, the military can't push him too hard. After all, he is a New York rich man and a super genius scientist. However, Harvey America's superficial identity is just that of a wealthy man in New York. Money cannot compete with power, and now Harvey America is not dealing with S.H.I.E.L.D. But Harvey America had not done anything dangerous and had not held a weapon that symbolized danger before. S.H.I.E.L.D.'s Nick Fury couldn't stand a chance against Harvey America for his sake. Chapter 33 Does he hate me? Let's go up and eat. Harvey saw Tony Stark understanding and said casually. Good. Tony Stark nodded upon hearing this. This time the two went directly to the restaurant on the second floor. It's the new year itself, and Tony Stark will prepare a lot of delicious food. This time I was going to find Harvey America during the new year, so I was even more prepared. But after meeting Harvey America, he also asked people to prepare 2 whole beef feasts, so these tables were not enough to accommodate, just like eating a buffet with rich dishes. Mr. Harvey America, it will take more than half an hour for the whole beef feast to be ready. Let's eat these first. The plates are over there. Pepper said with a smile after seeing Tony and Harvey America coming up from below. Although Pepper was shocked when she first saw him, when she saw Harvey finishing the dinner for 100 people without any pressure. This gave Pepper a new understanding of Harvey America's appetite. This time, she was not surprised to hear that Tony had specially prepared 2 more beef feasts for the other party. Well, please, Miss Pepper. When Harvey heard this, a smile appeared on his face and he nodded. Eat quickly, we have a guest coming later. After hearing this, Tony Stark picked up a dinner plate and began to choose the food he wanted to eat, and then said casually. Then Tony Stark went to sit down at the dining table nearby. Are there any more guests coming? Male or female? Pepper was not polite and started picking out her favorite dishes and came to the table. After hearing Tony's words, she inquired curiously. Harvey America directly picked up 2 plates, filled them for himself and sat at the dining table. It's Coulson. He's going to bring me something later. Tony Stark said casually after hearing this. What exactly did you talk about every time we went down there? Why is Coulson involved again this time? Isn't he an agent who specializes in handling weird incidents? Could it be that what you are talking about has something to do with strange events? Can you tell me about it? When Pepper heard these words, she felt that she was completely kept in the dark and was extremely curious. Pepper, like Tony, actually talks a lot. Don't you have many things to ask Harvey America? Tony Stark heard this and directly brought the topic to Harvey. Mr. Harvey America, you are in the stock and real estate business, right? When Pepper saw that Tony didn't want to talk about this topic, her beautiful eyes flashed, and she didn't ask any further questions and looked at Harvey. Strictly speaking, I'm in the stock business, and real estate is just a side job. Because I don't have much relationship with the military, I can't directly get a development permit to develop some land. I can only buy some properties and wait for the value to increase. After hearing this, Harvey swallowed the food in his mouth and spoke. When Pepper heard this casual sentence, she was speechless for a moment. Even I can't understand his values and behavioral logic, so Pepper, you don't have to worry about it. Tony Stark glanced at Harvey and said. Harvey America has more than 100 properties worth more than $10 million in his name, spread across every state in the United States. especially the manor where Harvey lived most often. Although he had not gone inside to see it, it was worth at least hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of land area, decoration, and various facilities. Among them, Harvey M. Locke has the most properties in New York, with as many as 57 villas and estates. He can also understand that Harvey M. Locke bought some villas in other states and other cities. Because owning real estate means that no matter which city you go to, you will have a place to live comfortably. But he couldn't fully understand that New York bought so much. The United States is still developing, especially in the city of New York, where the value of real estate is constantly increasing. It is not impossible to buy it specifically to let the value increase. But according to Harvey M. Locke's keen eye for stocks, if the money spent on real estate is used in stocks, he can earn more. But it was also thanks to the fact that Harvey M. Locke had so many properties in his name, so almost everyone thought that Harvey M. Locke was in the stock and real estate business. Therefore, Tony Stark could only convince himself that Harvey M. Locke simply wanted to be low-key and not so conspicuous. Well, Mr. Harvey M. Locke, I have been asked to ask you many questions. How on earth do you want to attend the banquet they hold? Pepper was a little surprised when she heard Tony's words, but she didn't dwell on the question just now and asked politely. I've received a lot of invitations recently and I'm worried about it. Please Miss Pepper, please tell them. I usually have a lot of things to do, so please don't give me meaningless invitations. Harvey said seriously. I will help you convey it tactfully. Pepper was stunned for a moment when he heard these words that clearly meant rejection, then he realized what he was saying and agreed with a smile. There are rumors in New York that Harvey M. Locke is also a playboy, but now it seems that the rumors are not entirely true. At least Harvey M. Locke has no idea about some rich young women in New York, that's for sure. Well, please excuse me, Miss Pepper. Harvey responded politely after hearing this. Carrying the finished dishes, he continued towards the tables filled with food. Tony, does Mr. Harvey M. Locke actually hate me? Pepper asked in a low voice as soft as a mosquito when she saw Harvey going to get something to eat. Fortunately, Tony Stark's body has been strengthened a lot, and his hearing is better than before, otherwise he would not be able to hear clearly. Nothing. If he really doesn't want to see you, he won't be polite to you, but will directly show disgust towards you. So if you don't see how disgusted he is, you don't have to think too much about it. He just left to add food. It's not as bad as you think. But when Tony Stark heard clearly, he immediately shook his head and spoke. After several contacts, Tony Stark knew that Harvey M. Locke was a very proud person. Obadiah Stane was straight up called trash. Nick Fury, the director of SHIELD, also showed no respect at all. If Harvey M. Locke really didn't want to see Pepper, he might not even bother to say anything, let alone respond to Pepper with more polite words. After hearing this, Pepper felt relieved when he saw Harvey M. Locke picking up vegetables. Miss Pepper, how does it feel to be in charge of Stark Industries? Harvey naturally heard what Pepper said, but he just pretended not to see it. After adding the dishes, he continued to sit back and asked casually. Mr. Harvey M. Locke, I know you are a shareholder of Stark Industries. But it's the first day of the new year, so please don't talk about work. Let me clear my mind and have a good rest for the day. Pepper heard Harvey talking about Stark Industries and rubbed his brow, looking like he had a headache. Now that Stark Industries is in charge of her place, Tony himself is constantly doing research to prepare for the transformation of Stark Industries. And she has to run around everywhere, which is not as beautiful as she originally imagined. I have no control over the direction of Stark Industries. Of course I didn't mean to ask, I just said it casually. Miss Pepper, if you don't want to talk about these things, don't take it too seriously. Harvey saw Pepper's head ache and said while eating. For everyone watching Pepper's life, let's not talk about whether he was likable or not. But Pepper has been working for Tony Stark since he was young and has done his best to deal with Tony Stark's affairs, large and small. Facing the arrogant and sometimes maverick and even willful Tony Stark. Pepper may have a feminine side and whine and complain, but in the end she will choose to believe and support Tony Stark. The strong relationship the two have accumulated over the years has made Tony Stark dependent on Pepper. This is also the key to making Tony Stark stop being a playboy and want to marry Pepper. Tony Stark just faced the opportunity to completely change himself, but he didn't immediately want to obtain powers similar to his. Maybe he was worried about Pepper's opinion. Harvey already knew this, so he wasn't surprised when Tony Stark asked him if he could give Pepper a long life. For Harvey, the more people and things that believe in and join the void, the better. Anyway, he can get void energy, and the other party can get a long lifespan and extraordinary power. This can be said to be a win-win situation. Therefore, Harvey never worried that he would not be able to win over others to believe in and join the void. After all, the long lifespan alone is enough to drive countless people crazy. I want to create an arc reactor that no one else can copy. Now I have some ideas that may be successful, so give me some more time. Tony Stark also knows that the reason why Pepper has a headache running around is because Stark Industries is currently in a transition period. But no new energy sources are available, which will arouse some dissatisfaction from other shareholders of Stark Industries and bring some pressure to Pepper. It's just that if the arc reactor he made now is leaked and let other companies get it, it can be copied after spending some time analyzing it. Therefore, it is impossible for Tony Stark to announce the arc reactor to the outside world. Tony, you don't need to feel too much pressure. After all, we are transforming into a new industry and are not following the old path. Just take your time. When Pepper heard Tony's words, she first comforted him. Made you laugh, Mr. Harvey M. Locke. I just didn't want my rare day off to be disturbed. My reaction was a bit excessive. I didn't mean to blame you. Then Pepper looked at Harvey and said with some embarrassment. I know, after all, it's not easy to be in charge of a company as big as Stark Industries. Harvey shook his head slightly, indicating that he didn't care, and spoke. Chapter 34 Psychological Problems. But it was also because after those words just now, the atmosphere among several people improved a lot. After a few people chatted for a while, Pepper curiously inquired about what advantages a woman needed to have to meet Harvey's goals. Just tell me, I'm also curious about how you chose. Tony Stark also became a little gossipy when he heard this. If I want to talk about what advantages it has, it suits my heart. You need these 3 advantages: beauty, intelligence, and strength. After hearing this, Harvey thought about it and said. Occasionally he would find some young and beautiful women to spend the night with, but that was just an act done on a whim. It's not about choosing a woman who exactly matches your desires. You have beautiful appearance, smart mind, and strong heart. There are many that meet the first 2 points, but it is not so easy to meet the last point. After all, women are not men. Even if they are strong on the surface, they are still relatively weak secretly. Pepper said thoughtfully after hearing Harvey's words. Tony Stark had a different feeling when he heard Harvey M. Locke's standard of merit. The first point of beauty mentioned by Harvey M. Locke is easy to understand: physical beauty. And intelligence should not only be as simple as being smart, but also being able to understand Harvey's thoughts through just a few words. Knowing what to say and what not to say. What to do and what not to do, this alone can exclude countless women. Because women are emotional, they may cry because of some things, and they may also be unable to stay calm because of some things. And what Harvey M. Locke said about being strong should not only be a strong mind, but also a strong enough strength. Otherwise, let alone supporting each other with Harvey M. Locke, the other party may not be able to understand Harvey M. Locke's thoughts and actions. Tony Stark thought about women who met such standards, but couldn't find one who met them. Your standards are a bit ideal. I'm afraid it would be difficult to find a woman who truly suits your needs even if you look around the world. So Tony Stark spoke up. I know, but I have a lot of time to look for it. It doesn't matter if I can't find it in the end. Harvey said with a smile when he heard Tony's words. Your words are too absolute. Although the requirements are very high, there are many strong women in the world who are beautiful in appearance, smart in mind, and strong in heart. When Pepper heard this, she felt that what Tony and Harvey said was too certain, so she retorted. Pepper, you didn't understand him. Tony said quickly after hearing this. After speaking, he glanced at Harvey, wanting to see Harvey's reaction. If someone who cannot understand the topic interrupts forcefully, it can easily arouse a person's resentment. Yes, but you would understand too, Miss Pepper, if given the chance. Harvey felt the look Tony was looking at him and said with a smile. Harvey M. Locke's unintentional words made Tony Stark's eyes flicker. Is this hinting to himself that Pepper might also gain power, or is he simply thinking too much? Is it possible for her? To confirm, Tony Stark looked at Harvey and asked. It depends on whether you can convince me. Harvey said meaningfully upon hearing this. Give me some time, I want to think about it, and I want to talk to her. When Tony Stark heard this, he knew that Pepper also had some opportunities. Even if this opportunity needed to be fought for, this was undoubtedly good news for him. Whatever. Harvey had a look of indifference on his face when he heard this, and continued to quickly eliminate the food in front of him. What are you guys saying? Who is she? Is it Mr. Harvey Ambaleka's ideal woman? Pepper heard the conversation between Tony and Harvey in a fog, and asked a little strangely. No, I will explain it to you if I think it's okay. If I didn't take the initiative to tell you, then don't pry too much. Tony Stark shook his head when he heard this and said. Now he doesn't even know if he wants to accept it. And even if he accepts it, whether Harvey Amlaka is willing to agree or not is one thing. After all, he was not the leading party in asking Harvey Amlaka to make himself a transcendent being. Not to mention Harvey Amlaka agreeing to let Pepper become a being similar to himself, so it's not time to explain it yet. When Pepper heard these words, she became more curious and wanted to understand what was going on. She was about to ask, but when she saw Harvey Amlaka next to her, she resisted the rude behavior and planned to ask Tony in private. It's too slow to eat like this. I'll leave some for you and I'll go over there and eat. Harvey raised his eyes and glanced at Tony, stood up, and spoke. He knew that the seed of desire had been planted and now he just had to wait for it to bear fruit. Humans are a race that longs for evolution, a longer lifespan, and more powerful power. And when you know that this evolution is not life-threatening, except for people who are willing to be mediocre, anyone who has a desire will basically not refuse. Is Tony Stark someone willing to settle for mediocrity? The answer is obviously not. No matter how his character changes, the madness of the scientist in Tony Stark's bones will not disappear. Otherwise, Tony Stark would not have created Ultron, a terrifying humanoid weapon, despite the opposition of others. And according to Tony Stark's mind, it is not difficult for Harvey to foresee that Tony Stark will use the abilities gained after joining the Void to create even more terrifying technology. It's okay, you can just eat it. We don't have a big appetite. Tony saw Harvey wanting to eat quickly and didn't mind. Harvey nodded when he heard this and walked towards the tables filled with food. Although he said he wanted to eat quickly, Harvey did not gobble it up hungrily, and his movements remained graceful. Tony Stark looked thoughtfully at Harvey's amazing appetite. If he gains power similar to Harvey Amlaka, gains a lifespan of hundreds or even thousands of years, and controls extraordinary power, the cost is only that his appetite becomes very big. He accepted this price, and he also had enough money to eat and drink as much as he wanted every day, as long as he didn't have to eat people. But now he still has difficulty making a decision, and he knows it very well. Because of his fame, he is a public figure. The moment he gains power, if he becomes too young, he will be noticed by others immediately, and then those people will regard him as an alien. This is a psychological problem and the most difficult problem to solve. Harvey Amlaka saw through his current entanglement, so he didn't think of urging him. It just gave him a chance to see if he could figure it out and accept it completely. Chapter 35 The Uncontrollable Demon. Pepper wanted to ask Tony in a low voice, but when she realized that Tony was frowning, he seemed to be thinking about something important. So Pepper also held back and didn't disturb her. But she could feel it, after Tony got acquainted with Coulson and Harvey Amlaka and talked about something secretly. Tony's personality and behavior undergo some changes. Because she took care of Tony for many years and did various things for Tony. So Tony used to tell her his ideas and requirements. Pepper thought she knew Tony very well, but now Tony had something that he couldn't explain to her right away. And the conversation between Tony and Harvey Amlaka just now sounded like only a few short sentences. She sounded confused, but both Tony and Harvey Amlaka knew what was going on. It made her feel increasingly unable to grasp Tony's thoughts. Obviously she and Tony had been together for more than 10 years and knew each other very well, but now Tony gave her a strange feeling for some reason. She couldn't understand what Tony was thinking about all day long. At this time, the sound of the helicopter's rapidly rotating fan blades came from outside the house. Pepper heard this voice and knew that it was Coulson who was coming, and Tony's character would definitely tell him to avoid it. I'm full, you guys go to work first. So Pepper stood up on his own initiative, observing Tony's reaction, with some expectation deep in his eyes, hoping that Tony would say there was no need to leave. Even if it means pouring them a cup of coffee, there is no need to avoid it. Well, you should go back to your room and take a rest first. We have something to talk about. No matter what noise is made, don't come down, let alone look. You can only come down if you get my news. But Tony came to his senses after hearing the voice and nodded. Good. Pepper saw Tony's reaction. Although she had expected it, she was still a little disappointed. She agreed and went upstairs. Tony had a lot to think about right now, so he didn't have time to pay attention to Pepper's mood problems. Jarvis directly released the helicopter situation. Not only is Coulson here, but there are also some faces that Tony Stark doesn't recognize. Jarvis opened the door for them and directed them to me. When Tony saw this formation, he stood up and spoke. Okay, sir. Jarvis received the instruction and immediately opened the door. And this time it was not just Coulson who came with him, Nick Fury, even Natasha and some other agents came with him. After entering the gate, under the guidance of Jarvis, they quickly arrived at the restaurant with a huge box. When Nick Fury and others came in, they glanced at Harvey M. Locke who was dining elegantly. Tony Stark, Howard's son. I didn't expect that you would think of your father one day and might leave some relics. Nick Fury glanced at Natasha, then came to Tony Stark and spoke. It sounds like you know what my father's relics actually mean. At this time, they formally met, and Tony Stark heard Nick Fury's words and spoke. Of course, because your father was once a super genius. And we have worked closely with the military and our SHIELD agency. So his relics became military secrets and have been kept by us at SHIELD. I originally wanted to find an opportunity to hand it over to you and have a good chat with you to see if you can discover something from it. I never thought you would take the initiative to think of it. Sure enough, the Tiger Father has no dog son. Nick Fury officially met at this time, and his words were no longer hidden like video communication, but spoke directly. There's no need for these compliments. Just give me my father's relics. Tony Stark saw some changes in Nick Fury's attitude. His eyes flashed and he said directly without intending to talk too much. Of course I can leave it to you, but you have to study it under the supervision of our SHIELD. Nick Fury did not refuse after hearing this, he just made his request. You just didn't have this attitude now. Why does it mean now that if I kick you out, I won't get my father's relics? Tony Stark raised his eyebrows when he heard this. Tony Stark, I don't want to do this either, but you have to understand that we also have our own difficulties. We need to ensure that what you find next is not leaked. Nick Fury heard this and said. As soon as Nick Fury said this, there were some irritating tuts coming from the side. Sent people to monitor me, and then sent this crazy woman to guard me. Is this what you, SHIELD said, have no ill intentions towards me? While Harvey was eating the food, he looked at Natasha who was standing 5 meters away from him and marveled. Harvey M. Locke. What we don't want is just that we judge that you are one of the insiders. And your property may pose some threat to us at SHIELD. So we need to make sure you don't leak the secrets either, and we want you to sign an agreement with us. When your property needs to be transferred for a large amount in the future, it will need to be reviewed by us. As long as you sign this, we can let you go at any time. Nick Fury turned around when he heard this, looked at Harvey and said. My money needs to be monitored by you in the future, so I can leave. Should I also thank you for your generosity towards me? Harvey also laughed when he heard this. Harvey M. Locke, you know the dark web and you have the wealth to potentially pose a threat to us. So in order for you and me not to interfere with each other, this is what we have to do. Natasha stared at Harvey M. Locke and said. What if I don't agree? Harvey asked rhetorically after hearing this. I hope you won't make it difficult for us, otherwise we will have to use other methods to get you to agree. Upon hearing this, Natasha took out a gun and said seriously. If verbal negotiations fail, you plan to use force. Harvey's smile disappeared, his eyes became calm, and his words became cold. When the words fell, many agents saw Harvey M. Locke's figure disappearing directly from the place. Now you might as well tell me, what do you want if I don't agree? Harvey held Natasha's neck with his left hand, lifted it in the air, and said coldly. Harvey grabbed it with his right hand, and Natasha's arm holding the pistol was broken with a click. The huge pain caused Natasha to scream out in agony and break out in cold sweat. Except for Coulson, the other agents immediately took out their guns and pointed them at Harvey M. Locke. But within a moment, a clicking sound echoed throughout the dining hall, all the pistols turned into powder and scattered on the floor, and their hands holding the guns were also directly twisted off. The severe pain made other agents and Nick Fury groan, their eyes full of horror. Mr. Harvey M. Locke, please stop. Coulson saw this scene and said quickly. I found that verbal negotiations failed and planned to use force. Now that you find that force won't work, you plan to negotiate with words again. Harvey's movements did not stop. With a flick of his hand, Natasha's body flew out like a rag and hit the wall heavily. There was a loud bang, and shocking cracks appeared. Pfft! The impact directly caused Natasha's internal organs to surge, severe pain came, and she couldn't help but spit out a large mouthful of blood. Ugh! Natasha felt as if all the bones in her body were cracked, she could not move, and she whined. Is it painful? The first time you came to test me, you even shot me with a gun to force me to take action to see if I would show unusual strength. If so, you want to draw me into your Avengers. Don't you, your stupid head, never think about it, if I really have the power. Because you intentionally shot me, might I just kill you? Harvey crossed more than 10 meters and came directly in front of Natasha, looking down at Natasha's face that was distorted by pain, his eyes were indifferent as if he was looking at a dispensable ant. At this moment, Harvey seemed to have become a lawless and terrifying demon in the eyes of everyone. And the words he spoke made everyone present feel cold to the bone. Tony Stark knows that Harvey Umbrica is terrifying. Because Harvey Amlaka just treated him casually, his physical fitness improved greatly. And that method was just what Harvey Amlaka called a small method. But now after seeing it with his own eyes, Tony Stark realized how terrifying Harvey Amlaka was. This is not something that humans can deal with ordinary weapons. Even if he puts on a steel armor, he is probably just a toy in front of Harvey Amlaka. Harvey Amlaka, if you have something to say, please tell me. Nick Fury endured the severe pain, raised his still intact left hand, and spoke timidly. Do you have something to say? You want to say that Blue Star may encounter aliens in the future. This Natasha is a genetically modified old woman, one of the few talents in Blue Star who has a good physique. If she dies, will it be a loss to Blue Star? Let's not talk about whether it will have any impact if a piece of garbage like her dies. What does your loss have to do with me? Harvey sat directly on the back of the dying Natasha and looked at Nick Fury and said calmly. Nick Fury was directly told his thoughts and fell silent. Didn't I tell you just now? If I can't offend you, I can't hide from you. Originally, you made me unhappy, but if you let me scold you a few times, it's even. As long as you don't disturb me, I won't bother to talk to you. But now it seems that your extremely stupid arrogance makes you very dissatisfied with this and wants to use your power to suppress me. Harvey saw Nick Fury's silence and said indifferently. Nick Fury found that it was impossible to restrain Harvey Umbrica with morality, and he didn't know what to do for a while. It was indeed because of his arrogance that he thought he could get Harvey Amlaka, a young Asian rich man, to sign a contract, and then they would truly live in peace. But they never thought that Harvey Amlaka dared to threaten their confidence, not only with money. I advise you to give up your thoughts, otherwise I will crush all your bones one by one and let you experience what pain is. Harvey looked at Nick Fury without changing his gaze, but suddenly issued a warning. This warning caused Natasha to suddenly stop touching her thigh, and her beautiful eyes flashed with despair. This man is simply a demon, powerful and cruel. Please vote, this is really important to me, please. Chapter 36 No next time. Mr. Harvey Amlaka, it's my fault that I failed to convey to my colleagues that you hate our shield. I hereby ask you to give us another chance. Coulson raised his hands and said cautiously, unknowingly using the honorific. When he was chatting with Harvey Amlaka before, the other party expressed his disgust towards SHIELD. It also made him understand that regardless of whether Harvey Amlaka had superpowers or not, he had no intention of joining the Avengers. He was very unhappy after hearing this at the time, so he did not choose to convey it back to S.H.I.E.L.D., but now that he thought about it, he should have conveyed it. That way, if Chief Fury had known about it in advance, he might not have been so unhappy when he was scolded just now, and it turned into the current disaster. You were smarter and didn't point a gun at me just now. But you should understand that with such little cleverness, you don't have the capital to negotiate terms with me. After hearing this, Harvey was a little surprised to see that the gun in Coulson's waist was still there, but his expression remained unchanged and he said indifferently. I know, so this is my request. I ask you, sir, to give us another chance. Please spare Agent Natasha. She is seriously injured and on the verge of death. She has already paid the price for her offense against you. We will never offend you again, I hereby guarantee you with my head. Coulson quickly shook his head when he heard this, and humbly spoke out his requests, pleases, and guarantees one after another. Harvey Amlaka, I also beg you, please don't kill anyone in my place. Tony Stark also spoke at this time, with some discussion in his words. He didn't know whether his persuasion was of any use in the face of Harvey M. Locke, who was obviously angry at this time. But if some lives were lost here, it would cause some trouble later. Coulson, I don't want your head, but next time, if one of you from S.H.I.E.L.D. wants to take action against me, you just come to me with the head of someone who wants to attack me. Otherwise you know the consequences yourself. Harvey glanced at Tony Stark when he heard this, then looked at Coulson and said indifferently. Must. Coulson felt the killing intent in Harvey's words, his eyes trembled, and he nodded quickly. I only give you this one chance. Nick Fury, I know what you have to rely on. You don't have to expect Captain Marvel to come back and help you. That woman can't help you, and she can't help me. Harvey stood up and looked at Nick Fury, warning. Nick Fury's eyes shrank when he heard Harvey mention that woman. The scene just now made him know that with human military power, there might be nothing that could be done about this demon like Harvey M. Locke. Nick Fury already had the idea in his mind that once he was out of danger, he would ask Captain Marvel to come and help. Because Harvey M. Locke is a very unstable factor for Blue Star. Especially since this unstable factor was something that S.H.I.E.L.D. had trouble dealing with, he had to find a way to solve this factor. It was just when Nick Fury heard Harvey Umbrella not only mention that woman, but even directly mention Captain Marvel's name. This immediately made all the thoughts and plans in Nick Fury's mind disappear. Thank you Mr. Harvey M. Locke for your kindness. Coulson bravely came behind Harvey M. Locke, hugged Natasha, and said gratefully. Tony Stark saw Coulson's actions and felt a little admiration in his heart. Coulson was really talented. In this situation, he actually dared to approach Harvey M. Locke. You only have this chance. You should know what to do next time. Harvey heard this and glanced at Natasha, who looked at him with fear, then looked at Coulson and said. I remember, even if I forget anything, I will never forget this. Coulson nodded and said seriously. In fact, Coulson wanted to come alone this time to bring Howard's relics. Although Harvey M. Locke threatened them, he had a careful talk with Harvey M. Locke. So Coulson knew clearly that although Harvey M. Locke hated them, he was not in a position to fight against them. Let's not even talk about the possibility that Harvey M. Locke has superpowers. If Harvey M. Locke really wanted to hire mercenaries on the dark web to deal with them, there was no need to say it directly. He could do it secretly. By then, they may not even have the chance to investigate if they want to. But during the video communication just now, Harvey M. Locke specifically said it, which was obviously a warning. As long as they no longer provoke Harvey M. Locke, both of them are in conflict with each other. It's just that Chief Fury felt that Harvey M. Locke, a rich Asian man without superpowers, acted so arrogantly. They thought it was necessary to warn Harvey Ambercar when they came to see Tony Stark, so they brought many people with them. So much so that the situation evolved into a horrific situation where they almost all died here. Get out! Harvey glanced at Nick Fury and the other agents and said coldly. After getting the word that he could leave, Coulson hugged Natasha, Nick Fury and other agents left in despair. They didn't even dare to forcefully want to spy on Tony Stark as he completed his research on the notes. I'll keep eating and you can start researching. The ice on Harvey's face melted like winter snow, and he spoke. Harvey Umbrella, is the Captain Marvel you just mentioned strong? Tony Stark thought for a moment after hearing this, and then asked with some gossip. Yeah, very strong. Harvey heard this and responded while eating. Stronger than you. When Tony Stark heard Harvey praise a woman as strong without hesitation, the fire of gossip in his heart ignited. Although I don't want to admit it, she is indeed stronger than me now. Harvey nodded again when he heard this. Jarvis, are they gone? Tony Stark opened his mouth when he heard this and asked quickly. The woman named Natasha was seriously injured, so they moved quickly. Upon hearing this, Jarvis released a projection, and the helicopter outside began to rotate. Fortunately, then Harvey M. Locke was scaring them just now. Tony Stark saw the projection and knew that the other party could not eavesdrop. He was a little lucky and continued to ask. It's a fact that Captain Marvel is stronger than me now, but it's also a fact that there's nothing he can do about me. Harvey was a little amused when he saw Tony Stark's fear that Nick Fury would hear him, and said. Captain Marvel is powerful, but his ability is relatively simple. As long as he escapes into the void, Captain Marvel will never be able to find him. So Harvey is at most afraid of Captain Marvel, not afraid. Compared to Captain Marvel, who is powerful but has only one ability, Odin, an ancient one, may be more likely to cause him more trouble. The Asa Protoss has a god who can directly monitor the 9 realms and can overlook Blue Star at any time. Once provoked, it will bring him a lot of trouble. The Ancient One can directly see through the past and future, and also controls weird magic. Therefore, before his strength reached a certain level, Harvey did not want to fight against the God King Odin and the Ancient One. Although I don't quite understand, it's good since you have the confidence to protect yourself. Tony Stark also felt relieved after hearing this and spoke. Harvey saw Tony Stark acting like he was on his side and said nothing. Chapter 37 Tony's Request. Tony Stark saw that Harvey Amlaka did not speak, but continued to eat. But Harvey Amlaka, how strong are you? Can the mushroom egg do anything to you? Finally, Tony Stark couldn't help but asked out of curiosity. The current human technology can't do anything to me. Harvey said casually after hearing this. In the past few months, he has not been idle. He has maintained an average of 6 evolutions per month and has evolved 283 times. His void skin has evolved 64 times. Even at the lowest point in the deep sea of Blue Star, facing the terrifying and heavy water pressure, it is no longer a harsh environment for him. He can also swim in it as freely as swimming. However, if he faced the explosion of mushroom eggs, he might be injured if he took it head-on. Therefore, as long as he avoids the power of the initial explosion of the mushroom eggs and the subsequent radiation caused by the mushroom eggs, even if he does not leave, his body will naturally evolve the ability to be immune to radiation in a very short period of time, and then move freely under the radiation of mushroom eggs. This is the scary thing about the void. Even if you are injured and are in a harsh environment, as long as you don't die, you can evolve the ability to adapt to all harsh environments in a short period of time. If I became a being similar to you, would I be able to reach your current level? Tony Stark's eyes were startled when he heard this, and he asked. It's impossible at first, but it just takes some time. You can also have an almost eternal lifespan and power that no one can match. When Harvey heard this, he knew that Tony Stark had moved. He nodded slightly and gave Tony Stark a clear answer. The void creatures themselves are the most powerful weapons, and with their ability to evolve, they will eventually become very powerful. The difference between different void creatures is nothing more than the requirements and difficulty of evolution. Tony Stark saw the power displayed by Harvey Umbrica, and couldn't help but show some enthusiasm when he heard these eyes. No one can match it, but what about the gods? But Tony Stark reacted quickly and asked with some confusion. After seeing the power of Harvey Amlaka, Tony Stark would not be surprised if a god came to him now. You can understand gods as creatures or aliens who are born with long lifespans and possess greater power. Because their power exceeds human understanding, and human lifespan is only a few hundred years. So humans view them as gods and some of the things they do as miracles. Harvey said calmly after hearing this. Human beings only have a lifespan of 100 years, which sounds really cruel. Tony Stark heard Harvey Ambaleka's understatement, thought for a moment, and smiled bitterly. Compared with those aliens, humans only have a short century of life. Throughout history, there are many amazing and talented people among human beings. They left behind enough deeds at a young age that will be remembered for a long time, but as they grow older, their physical functions inevitably begin to decline. The brain also becomes dull, and there is no more time and energy to discover things in the world that I have not discovered. In the end, they can only appear briefly in the long history. If they have a longer lifespan and combine geniuses from all eras, humanity's current scientific and technological civilization should become more advanced and developed. Harvey's eyes flickered when he heard this, and he said slowly. Lifespan is an unavoidable problem for humans, so countless humans desire longer lifespans. Desire to have more time to develop their talents. I long for more time so that I can witness with my own eyes the future I have imagined. I long for more time to witness scenes and deeds that I have never dared to imagine. Harvey himself has a longer lifespan, so he now has the ability to see the future with his own eyes. So he will not exclude what makes him who he is, and perhaps he will be regarded as an alien by others. But Harvey is very aware of human psychology. Everyone criticizes aliens and everyone longs to be aliens. Those who feel that having a long lifespan is useless or regarded as a curse is just because they have no power to do whatever they want except for their long lifespan. If there are such long years, it will bring countless wonderful things. Tony Stark was also greatly shocked when he heard Harvey Ambaleka's words. Harvey Amlaka has power beyond his knowledge, so his position and perspective on the world are completely different from his own. He faced the threat of Nick Fury. He was angry just now but couldn't fight back. Because Nick Fury represents the American military. But Harvey America faced the threat of Nick Fury and directly counterattacked with thunderous force. If it weren't for Harvey America's mercy, all the people in S.H.I.E.L.D. would have died here. Harvey America showed the power that he saw, making Tony Stark understand that no matter how he improved the steel armor, it would be difficult to match it. Because Harvey America revealed a key piece of news to him just now. That is, if he becomes a being similar to Harvey America, his power will become stronger and stronger over time. So Harvey America, who created him, must also have such abilities, and even be more terrifying and powerful. Because Harvey America said that even if he became a similar existence to Harvey America, he would not be able to catch up with Harvey America's footsteps. Although Harvey America just said it casually at the time, he did not forget what Harvey America said. Now countless people are eager to have the opportunity to have a longer lifespan and stronger power, right in front of them. It is undoubtedly extremely stupid and ignorant to worry about what others think of you. Harvey America, I know that I do not have enough power or qualifications to ask you for anything. So this is my request. Tony Stark thought of this, his eyes flashed with determination, and he looked at Harvey America and said, "You don't have to be so arrogant. You have a very good mind. And the relationship between us is not that of a superior and a subordinate, so you don't have to be so reserved. Let me hear your request and I will consider it." After hearing this, Harvey looked at Tony Stark, who looked determined, and spoke. "I really realize now that having power and having power are completely different concepts. I want to ask you to let me become a being similar to you, to gain a longer lifespan and greater strength." Tony Stark said seriously when he heard Harvey America's words. "Why don't you have a chat with Miss Pepper? Didn't you just say that you haven't told her these things yet?" After hearing this, Harvey America knew that Tony Stark had been mentally prepared, but he still did not agree immediately but asked instead. "She would understand, and that's why I know my behavior was greedy and maybe even shameless. But even so, I still want to say that I have one more thing to ask of you. If Pepper thinks clearly, it doesn't matter even if the power you give her is not comprehensive. Please let her live a longer life." Tony heard this and spoke. Women's desire for eternal youth is stronger than men's. So Tony knew that as long as he became younger and told Pepper the secret of becoming younger, it would not be difficult for him to convince Pepper that she would understand and accept it. Whether Harvey America is willing to agree to his request is still unknown. Please give me your recommendation votes. Chapter 38 The Greatness of the Void. Harvey clearly knew that it allowed Tony Stark to experience becoming younger and stronger physically. The time to ask yourself and aspire to be a being similar to yourself will not be too long. Once you become a being similar to me, because your identity is different from mine, you will inevitably be discovered by others and regarded as an alien. Is this the concern you had before? Are you really sure now that you have thought about it? Now the opportunity came to Harvey. After hearing the words, he pondered for a moment and spoke. To have a longer life to use your talents and discover things you have never understood. I believe this kind of opportunity is something that countless people dream of. It's just that I was too stupid before and failed to realize how mediocre my ideas were. But now I understand. Tony Stark looked at his palm and said. Now that you have thought about it, I can promise you. But before that, let me formally introduce myself. I come from the void, and the power I control also comes from the void. A smile appeared on Harvey's face when he heard this and he spoke. Tony Stark is not surprised that Harvey America is not human, because the knowledge Harvey America knows is obviously beyond some of the scope of Blue Star superpowers. And Harvey America's thinking is also the same. It is impossible to restrain Harvey America with morality. But when Tony Stark heard about the void, his eyes shrank. That god of death comes from the void like you. It was because of knowing the existence of death that Tony Stark came into contact with the door of the new world. The god of death is just an identity I use to facilitate my actions. After hearing this, Harvey's eyes flashed, he thought for a moment, and decided to speak out. If they are compatriots, Tony Stark will definitely spend money to find death and hope to have a chat with him as compatriots. Depending on how smart Tony Stark is, it won't be difficult to detect some clues by then, so it's better for him to say it directly now. No offense intended. When Tony Stark heard these words, his brain started to spin rapidly. Thinking of how arrogant he had been to Harvey America before, he suddenly broke into a cold sweat. You don't have to be afraid now that you know my identity. I'm not very particular about etiquette, but I have a code. I will treat others the same way others treat me. As long as you don't think about becoming my enemy, I won't hurt you. Harvey saw Tony Stark was so frightened and sweating so much that he comforted him. After hearing this, Tony Stark thought about it and realized that Harvey Mlaka did not care about his previous offense, and he felt relieved. You might as well say that the god of death is your kin, but in the end you will be the god of death. Then when I dragged you to see my steel armor before, I will no longer be a clown. But Tony Stark complained as he thought about his behavior. That's something I didn't consider, but I didn't think so much about you being a clown. On the contrary, I think you are a genius who can create steel armor with your own wisdom. Although this steel armor still has some flaws, as long as elements can be created to replace the palladium element. In a sense, it is also a cross-era product that can give others a certain degree of extraordinary power and bring about completely different changes to mankind. Hearing this, Harvey Mlaka stopped eating, reflected seriously, and then spoke. Let's not talk about this first. I know that you come from the void, so how can I become a being similar to you? Tony Stark was stunned for a moment when he heard these compliments, and changed the subject pretending not to care. Tony Stark, if you want to become a being similar to me, you must believe in the void and join the void. When Harvey saw the unstoppable smile and pride on Tony Stark's face, he didn't say anything. Instead, he continued on the topic Tony Stark said. Believe in the void and join the void. What exactly is void? Is it a place, an organization, or a manifestation of some kind of will? Tony Stark was a little confused when he heard that he was asked to believe and join. Tony Stark asked, and the system's voice sounded in Harvey's mind. It is discovered that a new creature intends to contact the void. Please confirm with the host to let the other person understand what the void is and change the nature of the other person's life. You can understand void as a certain place, a certain will, a certain race, and a certain dimension. Harvey didn't pay attention to the voice for the time being, but opened his mouth to explain to Tony Stark. So that means that if I join the void, I will no longer be a human. Tony Stark asked thoughtfully after hearing this. You can understand that. After all, humans don't have a long lifespan. The explanation is a bit difficult to understand. I'll let you see it and you will understand. After seeing it, you can really make a decision whether to believe in the void. Harvey nodded slightly when he heard this and said. Let me see it. What should I do? Tony Stark was also a little moved when he heard this, but he didn't know what to do. You'll know. Harvey said with a smile, and then confirmed the system's request. At the moment when Harvey agreed, Tony Stark's eyes became dull, and his consciousness seemed to be lost at this moment. Tony Stark felt like he had arrived in the vast galaxy of the universe. At this time, the galaxy surged and a huge energy black hole appeared, with eccentric colors that were extremely dazzling. Tony Stark has never seen this scene in real life, he has only seen this magical scene in movies. At this moment, Tony Stark noticed that the universe was shaking. This phenomenon was very strange, but he actually saw that the surrounding environment was twisting and shaking, as if something terrifying was about to come out of the energy black hole. When Tony Stark noticed this, his whole body froze, unable to move at all, as if all the cells in his body were afraid. Tony Stark had never experienced this feeling before, and he watched helplessly as the void of the universe began to twist. An unimaginably huge monster with purple skin that looked like a mantis emerged from the energy black hole. This is not the entire body, just a part of the body, and the size is so large that Tony Stark cannot understand it. In front of the huge size of this monster, the stars in the universe became insignificant at this moment. All the celestial bodies in the universe seem small in front of this monster, let alone Tony Stark himself. He now feels like a grain of sand in the sky. The monster finally transformed into a human figure, which was obviously very far away, but Tony Stark could see it clearly for some reason. And when Tony Stark saw this figure, he felt a storm in his heart. This figure from behind was very familiar to him. It was the Harvey Mlaka whom he had met. It's just that this Harvey Mlaka is a little different from what he came into contact with. This Harvey Mlaka walks among the stars of the universe with his hands behind his back, feeling a sense of invincible loneliness when looking at the universe. At the same time, Tony saw other huge and unimaginable monsters besides the mantis-like monster. He saw a figure wearing a golden mask and a white cloak that was as big as a galaxy. He stepped down into the void and disappeared without a trace. He saw a terrifying monster with barbs all over its body that was as huge as a galaxy and could swallow a star in one mouthful. He saw what looked like a vast and huge purple star. If he looked carefully, it was a big purple eye. That purple eye was observing everything in the universe in the dark. He saw monsters digging countless terrifying tunnels directly into the void, making unknown monster howls that shook the universe. He also saw a huge humanoid creature wearing a purple armor, which seemed to be overlooking the long river of time in the universe. Every different creature in the void was far beyond Tony Stark's understanding of the world, leaving him shocked and speechless. And these monsters all turned into the same figure in the end. At this moment, Tony Stark felt his own insignificance, the greatness of the void, and what the will of the void was. Please recommend, read, and invest. Chapter 39 Welcome to the Void. Just when Tony Stark was shocked, his body also changed at this moment, and the purple power of the void was changing the essence of his life. The creature that detects the host's persuasion is Tony Stark. He has a higher destiny and is rewarded with 100,000 void energy. The more times Tony Stark evolves, the more void energy will be rewarded to the host. The host successfully persuaded the first creature to join the void, and the selection of the second hero template is open. The host, please choose the time to make the selection. Hearing that the hero template was activated, Harvey's face smiled from the bottom of his heart. As long as he can obtain different hero templates, his strength will make a qualitative leap. But now is obviously not the time to choose, so Harvey is not in a hurry. Meanwhile, Kamal Taj. Ancient Yi looked at the future of this universe with a gloomy expression. She could still see the future of the universe before, but since about half a year ago. I don't know what happened in the long river of time, and the future of the universe is shrouded in some mysterious darkness. This was obviously a bad sign, so she had been looking for where the source came from, but had no results for more than half a year. Only the entire universe can be seen. Shrouded under a dark star that is as huge as a galaxy. Even Dormammu couldn't do this to make her unable to see through time. This is a sign that something immeasurable is happening in this universe. Ancient One wanted to investigate and stop it, but was unable to do anything. Stephen Strange. I hope you can stop it in the future. Ancient Yi could only place his hopes on future disciples who were more talented than himself, and whispered with some prayers. No matter what happens in the future, she must also wait for the arrival of the future Sorcerer Supreme Stephen Strange. I don't know how long time passed, when Tony Stark came back to his senses. Tony Stark, do you understand what the void is? Harvey saw Tony Stark open his eyes and a smile appeared on his face. Tony Stark looked at the friendly Harvey M. Locke in front of him, feeling a little unreal. Although I don't understand it very well, I know the greatness of the void. But Tony Stark nodded and said, "Welcome to the void." Harvey heard this response with a genuine smile on his face and held out his hand. "Thank you for giving me this opportunity." After hearing this, Tony Stark paused and extended his hand, saying gratefully. Having seen the monsters that Harvey Umbrica had transformed into, Tony Stark now faced this opportunity with nothing but awe and gratitude in his heart. Although Harvey M. Locke said that the void is a place, a race, and a dimension. But after seeing the scene just now, Tony Stark understood that Harvey Umbrica was the void itself. The Harvey M. Locke in front of him will definitely become the most terrifying will in existence in the void in the future. His idea was indeed correct. No matter how he improved the steel armor, he could not be an enemy of Harvey M. Locke. Joining the void will make it possible for you to make the most correct decision in your life. He couldn't imagine what it would be like to be an enemy of Harvey M. Locke, nor did he want to become Harvey M. Locke's enemy. The current Harvey M. Locke has not yet become invincible in the universe. However, he has completely understood why Harvey M. Locke said before that he could not reach the height of Harvey M. Locke. It's just a casual job. Now that you have joined the void, I will tell you what the nature of the void is. The essence of void is survival, evolution, and adaptation. You now have the ability to evolve by devouring living things and matter. As long as you continue to devour and evolve, your power will exceed your imagination. Let's get to know you, who is still weak now. It won't be long before your mentality will change with your strength. Harvey let go and watched Tony Stark begin to explain some of the situation. Didn't you say that was the price? Tony Stark asked in surprise when he heard that evolution requires eating. That is indeed a price, because it is not only food that is swallowed, but living things can also be swallowed. And by devouring certain more powerful creatures, you will evolve faster and stronger. So you have to remember, Don't be swayed by that hunger and turn into a monster that has no sense and only knows how to devour and evolve. If you are eaten by hunger and make too much noise, I will kill you myself. I hope I won't see you like that. Harvey warned seriously after hearing this. Okay, I'll be careful. When Tony Stark heard these instructions and warnings, his heart trembled and he nodded. As soon as he said these words, Tony Stark felt a sense of hunger in his body. This hunger came from the body's instinct and did not make him feel weak. Tony Stark immediately looked at the various foods placed on the table. At this time, with high concentration, Tony Stark discovered that the surface of these foods had more or less different colors of energy. Tony Stark found that the world in front of him had changed, and looked back at Harvey M. Laka. However, he didn't see any energy emanating from Harvey M. Laka. He didn't know whether it was because the strength gap was too far or because Harvey M. Laka hid it too well. But Tony Stark didn't care and immediately picked up the food and started eating. In the past, these foods were only delicious and filling, but now eating them made Tony Stark feel a warmth beginning to fill his body. It's just that Tony Stark only ate for 2 minutes and ate more than a dozen dishes in a row. This kind of food was far more than he had before. Tony Stark's body also began to undergo some changes. His brown hair became darker and his appearance began to become younger. System, in which direction will Tony Stark evolve? Harvey observed Tony Stark with interest. Other creatures that join the void are different from their hosts and do not have hero templates. So other creatures will only evolve the various abilities of the body at first, and what they will eventually evolve to is unknown. The system rarely responds, but it still answered this question. Does that mean they need to evolve and learn certain abilities on their own before they can become truly powerful? Harvey asked thoughtfully after hearing this, but the system did not give an answer to Harvey's question. It's just that Harvey thought about the hero template and the hero's origin, and probably understood this principle. He can directly get the hero template, master certain abilities in a clear evolutionary path. Tony Stark doesn't have a hero template, so he can only rely on his own evolution and exploration. But as long as Tony Stark is not swallowed up by desire and still maintains his sanity, with a long lifespan and a body that will definitely be able to travel the universe in the future, it is not difficult for Tony Stark to learn to master more extraordinary abilities. It's just that if you want to get strong power, you need more time and energy. Even if there is no hero template, it is already a great gift to be able to join the void and gain terrifying evolutionary abilities in a long lifespan. Please support me by voting, reading, and investing. I'm really begging you all. Chapter 40 Reasons to Make Money. Tony Stark ate a lot of food, and the more he ate, the stronger the power came from his body. The feeling was intoxicating, but suddenly Tony Stark realized that all the food was gone. I remember that in order to invite you, I prepared lunch for at least 100 people. Where's all my food? Tony Stark was stunned for a moment. What do you think I've been doing? Faced with this question, Harvey patted his still flat stomach and asked. Jarvis, help me prepare more food, at least for 400 people. Today I am hosting a banquet for Harvey M. Laka. Tony Stark knew that after the food was finished, he didn't mind and said with a smile. He will remember Harvey M. Laka's reminder to him that devouring creatures will evolve faster, but he will never try, even if the evolution speed is slower. Anyway, his current lifespan is not only the short 100 years of human beings. He has a lot of time to get stronger, do what he likes, and give full play to his talents. Okay sir, I'll get ready right now. Jarvis immediately agreed after receiving the instructions. Although it will be difficult to find a chef to help you cook on the first day of the new year, let alone cook so much at once, you can definitely find someone if you pay more money. Harvey M. Laka, can you share with me some of your evolution experiences? Immediately, Tony Stark looked at Harvey and asked. To be honest, I can't be your reference because you and I are different. You may not understand this now, but you will understand it soon. This difference does not mean that you have some defects. You still have a long life. It's just about what abilities you can master and how powerful you are. I don't know either. It's all up to you to find out in your own time. Harvey heard that Tony was going to treat him to a big banquet, and he had no intention of leaving immediately. He sat down on the sofa and said, I understand that you can't be used as a reference. I just want you to tell me something. Has anyone else joined the void besides me? Let me communicate with others, maybe it can speed up my... Tony Stark walked towards the sofa as he heard this. It's just that when Tony Stark sat down, he didn't pay attention to controlling his power. Tony Stark's body collapsed on the sofa, and his body sank directly into it. What the hell? Tony Stark shouted, feeling no pain, just feeling weird. No need to make a fuss, you are just starting now. You have to learn to master your own power, so in addition to doing research every day, you have to take time to control your power, otherwise you will cause some damage if you are not careful. As for companions, apart from you, no other creature has joined the void to become your companion. But there will be more and more in the future, and then you can share your thoughts on your respective evolutionary paths. Harvey looked at Tony Stark, who was yelling F***ck, and said slowly. So that means I'm the first. Tony Stark struggled and stood up from the sofa. After hearing the news, he pointed at his face and asked in disbelief. Harvey nodded upon hearing this. Thank you for your appreciation, Harvey M. Locke. Tony Stark understood after hearing this and said gratefully again. Because Harvey M. Locke said that some geniuses who have left some ink in the long history of history are unable to further develop their talents due to lifespan limitations. So in the eyes of Harvey M. Locke, he meets the criteria of a genius who left history. Although he did not have Harvey M. Locke's recognition and appreciation, he himself believed that with his own invention, he could leave a mark in history. But after getting this opportunity, it was different. He could take longer to write his own history and story. Although I gave you this opportunity, you don't have to be too reserved and just chat with me normally. It's normal for you to want to find other people of your kind to share your thoughts on evolution. Although I can't be your reference for evolution, I can tell you what foods to eat and what things to do to speed up your evolution. Harvey heard this and spoke. Then tell me quickly. Tony Stark was fine with hearing the normal conversation, and stopped being polite. There was no suitable place to sit, so he stood. In Tony Stark's mind, Harvey Umbrica is the embodiment of the will of the void. Now Harvey M. Locke doesn't know why he is staying in Blue Star, but it gives him the opportunity to directly ask the will of the void. Tony Stark certainly won't miss it. There are two ways to evolve in the void. One is to absorb, devour, and evolve continuously, and the other is to adapt to the environment and achieve different evolutions. The more powerful the creature that becomes food is during its lifetime, the more it will accelerate its own evolution. For example, cows, bears, tigers, leopards, some big fish in the deep sea, and other more powerful animals on Blue Star have more life energy. But if you don't want to be targeted by the CPCA and cause some trouble, then it's best not to eat those protected animals. Just eat beef and pork specifically. They can also provide good energy to help you evolve. Harvey heard the words and explained patiently. Now that he has roped Tony Stark into the void, he certainly doesn't want Tony Stark to turn into an irrational void creature. Although Tony Stark may become more powerful after becoming irrational, everything is in vain without sanity. Therefore, Harvey Umbrica also plans to explain clearly to Tony Stark some important points. No wonder you want to make money. Tony Stark was thoughtful when he heard Harvey's words. According to the amount Harvey M. Locke eats, if he doesn't have any spare money in his pocket, he will have no choice but to grab it everywhere. Although it is not impossible to rob it, if you do that, Harvey M. Locke's identity will not be hidden so well. Although Harvey M. Locke has been exposed to S.H.I.E.L.D. now, after seeing Harvey M. Locke who is like a demon, if S.H.I.E.L.D. is smarter, it will not dare to expose Harvey M. Locke. Card. Yes, I make money just so that I can eat what I want without attracting attention and enjoy life. When Harvey heard this, he didn't deliberately hide it and said with a smile. End of the chapter. Like and subscribe for more videos like this.